All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday, and you know what time it is here on Sportswire Radio. We are now live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and of course our flagship sportnarium.com/player. We're going to go through all the NFL scenarios, talk about some stuff off the field, obviously, that has been the talk of the sports world, and we'll get the rest of the guys on here shortly. But with me first is from the Baseball Banter Show, and we'll give him a quick intro because he's the only one here. My voice is feeling good, so we'll try to get everybody on a positive side. So, wait for it. What do we do here on the Sports Report? Number one, Double Sports, you're the host of the Baseball Banter. His name is Justin Gianelli. Justin, you can feel like everybody else there for a second. And,
how you good? And rock and roll. Definitely a lot of energy after that.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear. And also here just came in right after the intro. He is the man also with the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, and his name is Chris Bezea. And Chris, how you doing here tonight?
Good, man. Good.
Glad to hear. Glad to hear everybody's well, and we want to talk and touch upon it for a few minutes. We'll get into all the news and notes, but obviously some unfortunate news at the beginning of the week, but it seems like, in a way, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. And when it comes to Mr. DeMar Hamlin, obviously that has been the talk of the entire sports world. And I've even heard it on the satellite radio. I've heard it from all different types of people. But it seems like here, from what we've heard, that he might be on a long road to recovery rather than some other things that could have happened to him. So I'll get your guys' thoughts on it. And Justin, give me your thoughts here on where we are and the positive developments now from Buffalo Bills player DeMar Hamlin.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ask for any better news than what we've received throughout the course of the week. Obviously, something very scary and something we rarely ever see in a live sporting event. So, not let alone the football field. And obviously, it was an innocent play that happened to strike at the right or wrong moment, however you want to look at it. And he had to be, resuscitated back to life, both on the field and at the hospital. And, as the week has progressed, he's gotten progressively better, so much so that I believe he's no longer intubated, and he's, communicating. He was communicating yesterday through writing, and he's slowly improving. And yeah, it's going to be a long road to recovery, but certainly things have trended in the right direction. And that's all we can ask for at this point. We just ask that he can return to life as normal as it was beforehand. So,
sure.
Very, very pleased. And you know what? You got to be, if you're the Buffalo Bills, you got to be lifted up by this. And the fact that he is making such a quick recovery, it seems, even though there's going to be a long way to go, be a lot of steps to take before he's back to where he was. You got to be so encouraged by all of this.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And certainly, I want to, before I get to you, Chris, give a shout out to the Mad New Yorker. I believe it's Carlos Otoro Chavez. His Happy New Year prayers to all those affected Bills, Bengals, and the Hamlin family, and of course, also Pittsburgh University. Saw Kenny Pickett, of course, make a few comments about it. Mike Tomlin as well. So in that family as well, he definitely means a lot. And Chris, certainly give me your thoughts on where we are with DeMar Hamlin. Obviously, got to root for the guy, and the guy's only his second year in the league, and he's made a lot of progress. And certainly, hopefully, he gets to have a normal life one day. And give me your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, I mean, to hear the news today that he actually spoke to the team, via Zoom video call, that was pretty amazing. Everybody's got really great about that. The team, the league, the fans, everybody, his family, obviously. So to go from like one extreme to another just on like Monday night, right? I mean, the build up to that game where it was the two best teams in the AFC at the time, the two hottest teams fighting for that number one seed. And then, and it was living up to the buildup, obviously. It was a quick score and then a field goal and then, and then Cincinnati got the ball back and then, the tragic event happened. And it's amazing how we went from that to, forgetting about the game, like not even thinking about the game, just thinking about how he's doing and not knowing anything, that helpless feeling I think we've all been I think in that waiting room, like his mom was probably that night, just waiting for some kind of news from the doctors. But you couldn't get any better news than today, that he actually spoke to his team, tell them that he loves them and everything else. So great news. I mean, this week couldn't have ended any better than the way it did for him and his family and the team. So hopefully, you hate to see this, but hopefully the league could kind of march on now and get back to, finishing up the season and then next week the playoffs. You hate to think about that as in a hospital, but you have to, right? I mean, you
have to. I mean, listen, the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals certainly. I mean, they're in races that. I'll touch upon that in a second with the different scenarios out there that the league kind of proposed. And Carlos here wants to say the NFL doing a good job at moving forward positively. Yeah, I mean, listen, they could not have restarted that game. I mean, I had made the reference and I spoke to a few people during the week, and I said, well, the WWF at the time had made a grave mistake when Owen Hart had famously fallen from the sky there at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City on May 23rd, 1999, and they continued the pay-per-view, and people had just seen him as the Blue Blazer at the time basically fall like there was nothing, and he died, and that was just a traumatic thing, and the WWF was sued for a lot of money at the time, and certainly rightfully so with the Hart family at the time, and I think the NFL had no choice but to certainly suspend the game, and there was just no way they could have played after that. So the human element, as I think I've said to others, has played out here, and I want to also talk about the scenario the NFL kind of proposed here if different things come out with the AFC Championship. Yeah, I was going to say, what's your guys' thoughts on that? So it's kind of my segment. Give me your thoughts.
Well,
give me your thoughts, Justin.
Well, first of all, it's unfortunate that this happens so late in the season. Because they could have moved around bye weeks if it was earlier in the year. If this was an October game, could have done that. But obviously, being so late in the season, you're not wanting to push back or unfairly give the AFC a bye week next week and then start the NFC playoffs and replay the Bills-Bengals game. It just wasn't feasible to get back going at a later date because of where we are in the season, and so you're looking at a potential neutral site conference championship game if the Bills and Chiefs are involved. And but now a lot of that is based on do they win Saturday? Does the Chiefs win Saturday? Do the Bills win Sunday? Do the Bengals win Sunday? And fair or unfair, the Ravens don't have a shot at the division now because of the one more game played.
Yep.
And they would have beaten, if they win, they would have beaten the Bengals twice, holding the season series.
And that was the Sunday night game where the Ravens had won against Cincinnati early in the year in Baltimore.
Exactly. And so, obviously, what would happen there, and it's possible, I don't know how exactly it would shape up, because it's possible the Chargers get the 5 and the Ravens get the 6, which would mean the Bengals would likely be the 3 seed. That game, if it's Bengals-Ravens in the first round, the home team would be determined by a coin flip, which, in essence, if the Ravens win 2 games against the Bengals, I guess it's the only fair way to do it, because the Bengals, lost that 17th game, and so they will have been a half game better, but the Ravens would have been tied if the Bengals had won. I mean, if the Bills had beaten the Bengals on Monday night. So it's very, very complicated, and it's three, and it involves 3 teams that are very potentially likely to be 2 of those teams in the AFC Championship game, because these are the 3 best teams in the AFC that it directly affects.
Absolutely, no question about it. And Chris, and before I get to you, I have a bunch of comments here, and also from the Mad New Yorker. There's no perfect solution.
There's not.
Just pick something and make it happen. The NFL hasn't done too bad in other situations. Only winners to any pick is the NFL. Chris, give me your thoughts on all this. I mean, this is certainly something that if you think back in sports history, I mean, I was trying to think about this here in the morning before we came on the air. I was thinking, well, I guess, in baseball, you'd have a 1-game playoff before we had the wild cards when teams were tied for a division, or if they were tied for a wild card spot, and you had that. I mean, was this the best way to go about it? Could you have theoretically, I don't know, maybe did something to have these teams play on a Thursday and then maybe push the season back a week as some had proposed? I mean, give me your thoughts, because I know you and Sharma are going to talk about this, and I'm going to get a chance to listen to some of it over the weekend here with the Liftoff Jets show on sportnarium.com/player.
Yeah, I don't think they could have done it any other way, right? I mean, they couldn't play the game next week because now you're giving everybody the bye week except for them. So now you even push it back, unless you push the playoffs back even one more week, it definitely wouldn't have mattered, because now if you did that, if you played the game next week, then they would push the playoffs back another week. So that means the number 1 seeds would get 2 weeks off. So they wouldn't have to play for 3 weeks. So there's no way the NFL would have did that, right? So I think this is the best way. Yeah, it stinks to have a coin flip to determine whether they're going to play or a neutral site field. I know it stinks.
I always think of do you remember Thanksgiving '98 between the Steelers and Lions when they had the coin toss and the referees thought it was the Lions won the toss when it was really the Steelers. I think it was Jerome Bettis on the toss. I hope we don't have a scenario like that.
That'd be so bad.
Let's hope it's done much better than that.
Let's certainly.
And look, they talked about potential sites like Lucas Oil Stadium, Ford Field potentially in Detroit. Those being some of the sites that could
Makes
matter. Sense. I'd put it outdoors because either way, if you're in Kansas City, Cincinnati, or Buffalo, you're going to be dealing with outdoor bad conditions. Hell, have the game at MetLife Stadium.
Let's do it at MetLife.
Well, would you do it in a more neutral outside place where it's, let's say, not too cold, not too high? I know that kind of limits our choices out there, but I mean, let's say if they're eliminated Miami's field or Jacksonville, Duval Stadium, those maybe would, if you're going to stay in conference, maybe Las Vegas. Everybody loves Las Vegas, right? I mean, so I'm sure the league would love something like that. That could be a possibility. I do want to give a shout out to somebody that might be watching and listening that is trying to stay up, and then is, of course, one of our fans, Jane. She's a big fan of Sportswire Radio, so I wanted to make sure I give her a shout out if she is out there. But those are some of the things here that come in mind, and some other news and notes I thought across the league that we get a couple of minutes on that from you guys. And this year, currently, right now, there are only 3 teams that have made the playoffs with a 6-game losing streak in league history. 1970 Bengals, 2014 Panthers, and the 2020 Bears, who kind of just stumbled into the postseason. They had a 6-game losing streak. They were the 8-8 year.
Stumbled out.
Well, yeah, that was the Nickelodeon game, I believe, against New Orleans, which was just a whole other thing. I remember watching because I'm a Nickelodeon guy. 33 straight. I get that. 33 straight seasons now from at least 4 new teams have made the playoffs, with the Giants making it now being number 4. We have the Giants, the Chargers, the Ravens, who we just mentioned, and, of course, the Minnesota Vikings. Yep. Also, there's a possibility as many as 7 we could go up to because the Jaguars and Titans, which we'll pick in a little while here. Of course, Sportswire's beloved Detroit Lions and the Miami Dolphins could also make that 7, so we'll see if there's some added teams. Eagles, interesting stat, Chris, actually could break the NFL single-season sack record. They have 68 sacks currently. 4 more would get them tied with the 1984 Chicago Bears. Everybody would have thought it was the Super Bowl Shuffle Bears, but it was the 72 from the Bears had. Who would have thought that? But 84, they set the record. Eagles need 4 more to tie or break. Mike Evans, interesting stat here, 9 straight seasons to start his career with 1,000 yards. First player to ever do that in NFL history, and he's also one of now 3 players to have done it 9 consecutive seasons. The other 2, I think most people would have probably guessed, Jerry Rice, who just played forever, and Tim Brown. Of course, Tim Brown had a long career with the Raiders and the Bucks. He did it 9 times. Jerry Rice did it 11. Also, right now, currently with Cameron Jordan with the Saints, he now has 8.5 sacks. He's done that 11 straight seasons, and he joins the likes of the Minister of Defense, Reggie White. Of course, you know him very well. Chris Stolman, John Randall, who was always one of my favorites when I used to play Sega Dreamcast when they had the NFL games there. I believe he was either on the cover or he was in the commercials. Derek Thomas, God rest his soul, and Robert Mathis, I wouldn't have guessed, also did it.
Colts, I believe.
Yeah, he had 11. He did it 11 straight seasons.
Remember the tandem that he remember the tandem he and Dwight Freeney created in Indianapolis.
And he's also a Hall of Fame finalist still yet again. So that was also on
and speaking of the Hall of Fame, I mean, you're talking about two guys who are writing the resumes for the Hall of Fame, and Mike Evans and Cameron Jordan. I mean, Cameron Jordan's been a tremendous defensive player throughout his career, and Mike Evans has gone through has shuffled through multiple quarterbacks in those 9 years.
Some bad ones too, right? He's had some bad ones in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it wasn't all Brady. And which I'm sure we'll get into whenever the brute force comes in here. Mike Tomlin still has that shot at that 16th consecutive season of at least 500 or better. And if he does that, he would join only 3 other coaches. Tom Landry, 21 in a row with the Cowboys. I would have probably guessed that. Yep. Bill Belichick, right, 19. And George Harris, Papa Bear, George Harris, 16. So that's rarefied air there with Mike Tomlin. So those were some
an outside shot to make the playoffs if things go their way.
I think they got a shot. Listen, we'll talk about that Jets and Dolphins.
A lot of things got to fall for them, right?
You know what though? But listen, and we'll get into that with some of these games.
Jets beating Miami. I don't know if I feel too confident about that.
Well,
right? I don't know about the Dolphins though.
And that was
I know.
We're going to pick that game.
Versus Trace Thompson, or whatever his name is.
Skylar Thompson. That game's anybody's guess at this point.
Well, we're going to get – that's going to be obviously our last game that we'll pick here. And of course, here, all things here on Sportswire Radio we're going to get into. We're going to pick all the games here. And I'm with Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, Chris Bizet of the Liftoff Jets, and also the Talking Rivals, and Anthony Finkel here, the napkin. Anthony Finkel here. And Anthony Finkel, certainly we are waiting here we're waiting for the brute force because we were going to obviously figure out here who's got the lead between John Gonzalez and Anthony Finkel. It was a 2-game difference last week, and we know that the brute force we saw on Facebook in our group with some other people like Joe Bostrom, who I ran into last weekend in the friendly confines here of Staten Island. It was a 2-game difference, and we're kind of waiting to see if Anthony Finkel picked up from some ground. And Anthony Finkel, which I'm not going to fully put in here, says he's checking in from Arlington, Virginia. So would that mean, Anthony Finkel, are you on your way to FedEx Field on Sunday? Are you going there to see Cowboys Commanders? You're not too far away from there, right? From Arlington, Virginia. So I guess
did he put his picks on a napkin this time and send them in, or what?
Well, let's Anthony did. I think that's kind of the burning thought that everybody has here. I was in Duffy's on Tuesday, and I thought, well, let's see, does Anthony Finkel's napkin here come up and play? But he needs that W, and he says, John Gonzalez is my brother, but this weekend we are rivals. It's funny that Anthony Finkel had said that because John Gonzalez was kind of saying the same thing to me on Facebook. He was messaging me about this, how much he needs to be able to overcome and kind of hang on here for the lead. And Anthony Finkel says the picks are coming in tomorrow, but we're going to pick these games in a little while, though. Why don't you hang around and at least give the brute force your game so we can read them off? I mean, that's kind of not fair, right? I mean, John Gonzalez was making the point that if he's picking the games live, shouldn't you pick at least some of the games or give the brute force your game? So, I mean, Anthony Finkel, I mean, we're all here. We pick him every week. You know the drill. You come in here, but that's kind of like, well, if John Gonzalez is going to pick this game, that means I got to pick differently. So if the case is you're behind him in the standings, that would be one way to look at it. I get it. You're a busy guy, but at the very least, I would think that you'd want to message the brute force and kind of tell him, the games beforehand, because that's not fair. I mean, so he says, okay, I'm going to get my napkin ready. Yeah, he's probably the kind of guy that's probably got a napkin and a pen already, and he's probably going to write them down. So, I mean, those are some...
Maybe he went down to Virginia to talk to somebody and to get his picks straightened out. He might be talking to an insider.
Well, I mean, that would make sense, right? You're in D.C., you're in Virginia. You think about probably a lot of stuff's going on with the league there. It's kind of the centralized place. Obviously, Cowboys, Commanders is going on there. A lot there to dissect, and I'm sure a lot of other places there. Ravens aren't too far away from there, so that would certainly make sense. And if you are on Sportswire Radio, and if you like what you hear from us, you can follow us anytime here on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great great content on sportnarium.com/player. And I want to give a big shout out to John Gonzalez of the Sports Authorities Group. And you can follow his page anytime on Facebook at the Sports Authorities. We have over 3,700 members in John's group, and always a lot of people posting it. Anthony Finkel's always posting there, and also Chris as well. And Anthony Finkel would like to respond. He says, Chris is right. I got a ringer here. We meet in the parking lot at night. I give him cash, and he gives me the napkin with the sweet. That reminds me, I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't say this on the air. I shouldn't. I won't say the person's name. I won't say his name because it'll get tied to me. But there's a friend of mine, and he grew up in Gravesend, and he just moved. Actually, he doesn't live in Gravesend anymore. So I don't want to. That might give it away if I say the guy's name. And what he used to do is for the Super Bowl. If I say the place, I hope I don't get shot for saying this, but there was a place. It was I think it was like either a VFW hall over there at an American Legion post, right off Day Hill Road, right off Day Hill and McDonald. Anthony Finkel's going to probably know the location when I say it. And what they would do is a lot of these different guys, they would get together and they would kind of, I guess, bookie and they would pick these NFL games and they would do things I'm sure that I couldn't say on the air. And he was one of those guys. And I remember him saying that if somebody he knew would spend like all this money and they would play the games and like a ringer. So that was one of the things that came to mind. But we're talking now, he probably hasn't played in that probably pool in like 8 or 9 years. So I don't want to say the person's name because I will get in trouble, especially for those out there that live in Brooklyn or from Brooklyn. They'll know exactly the place I'm talking about. So that's here nor there. But you know what? While we're here, right? Let's get into some of these different games here, and we'll start first with the Saturday games. I know the Brute Force will be with us, and we have a lot of games, so we might as well start now. And Justin, let's go to the first matchup here between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. And the Brute Force here, actually, before I do that, says, good evening, fellas. Just got home from 2 wins, 1 in overtime. I'm going to try to be here around 10:15. All right. Appreciate that, the Brute Force. Definitely take your time. We will definitely pick some of these games first, and then I'll go to you in a shotgun fashion. So we'll do it chronologically, and that means the JV and the varsity teams won, so congratulations to the Plainview JFK team, and I know the Brute Force will be out there back on the court tomorrow morning, I believe, as well. I think we're looking at either a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock start time, so the Brute Force will definitely be a busy man, but I know the Brute Force, our buddy Joe Santoro won up to you this past Tuesday, but I'm going to let it slide so you come on later and we'll speak about that. So good to hear from the Brute Force. Thank you. So, you know what? Let's talk about some of these games here we got to pick because obviously a lot to get into here. So, Justin, let's go first with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. You know, Justin, if I was going to bet just on over-under and spreads, I would say I'd be picking the Las Vegas Raiders here, definitely, because the Kansas City Chiefs, even last week, couldn't beat the spread, and they've been probably one of the teams at the bottom of this year when it comes to records. I believe it's 5-10-1 now, yes. and they might be 13-3. But when you were picking as a Las Vegas person, like we do here, that would certainly not be good. But Raiders lose a typical Raiders game, and Chiefs win a typical Chiefs game. So we don't pick when it comes to who's favored, but we just pick on who's going to win. But 4:30 p.m. Give me your thoughts here. ESPN Chiefs on the road against Las Vegas. 52.5 is the over/under, and what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I do think Kansas City is obviously the better football team here, but you can't help but be impressed with the way Jarrett Stidham stepped in last week against a great San Francisco 49ers defense. You know, I was the one who said the 49ers would shut them out, and oh boy, they did not. They took them to overtime. Raiders played a whale of a ball game last week, and the 49ers were able to sneak out a victory. But overall, it was a really good performance from Jarrett Stidham. We'll see if there's more where that came from against a defense not quite as good. Maybe the Raiders will be able to put up some points here at home. But it's just hard to keep up with Patrick Mahomes. I think this is where he'll seal the MVP this week. I don't know if the Chiefs will cover because they, like you said, they've been so bad at covering. But I definitely see the Chiefs winning this ball game.
All right, that's fair. And Chris, Chiefs have certainly played as their usual selves when it comes to the record. But the spread, it's been a whole different story. But the Raiders definitely played well against the 49ers. That was probably, I think, the best the team had fared against the 49ers on the offensive side of the ball against them in, I want to say at least, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12 weeks. I mean, the 49ers have been arguably the hottest team in the league. And certainly it was a story in itself. And of course, the Raiders lose a Raiders type of way in overtime. But Chiefs here definitely, I guess, based on these different scenarios, can kind of clinch home field here throughout with 14 wins and lock up possibly the MVP for Mahomes. And what's your thoughts here in this matchup? 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Chiefs on the road against Las Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think Kansas City wants to go into the playoffs on some kind of a streak, on a hot streak, playing well. So you got to go with Kansas City in this situation. I can't see them losing this game, even though it is in Vegas. But I mean, like Justin said, I think Mahomes is going to solidify his MVP with this game. And you know what? And I think the Kansas City defense, they're a young defense, and they're starting really well. Towards, it seemed like they've gotten better throughout the year. And Kansas City's, if they did have a weakness, was their defense. But I thought their defense this year played much better as the season went on. So I'm going to take Kansas City. Like you said, I don't know if they're going to cover, but they should win.
No, I think Kansas City's definitely played very well defensively, 356 points, and that means they're giving up about 22 a game, and that's a little bit lower than years past. But it is a Raiders team that they do score. They have. Yeah, listen, and the Raiders have scored 382 points, and Josh Jacobs has had certainly an amazing season there, and they've definitely, but it's been a Raiders type of season. It's kind of the indicative of a usual Raiders type of season in the past decade, and they lose the close games, and they've played pretty much several close games, and you're going to look back on the Raiders season and probably say, well, that's kind of why we're not in the postseason once again. That's why they've missed the playoffs now. It'll be, of the last 20 years, 18 times, and that's a franchise that, was the premier team and maybe all of the NFL for a very long time, especially throughout the 70s and 80s, but not in the past 20 years. But hard to argue against Kansas City. I do think it's going to be a usual type of game at the Raiders play. I think it'll definitely be relatively high scoring. That's why if you look at just from the over-under standpoint, I believe this is the highest over-under for the week this year, 52.5. So I think it's going to be one of those games, right, the highest one, right, 52.5.
Only game in the 50s.
Yep. Well, I think the Lions and Packers is 49. That's the one I have here in my notes. So we'll definitely get to that as well.
After only 1 week, right?
Well, I mean, look at San Francisco's defense and look at what he did there. And Josh Jacobs has had a great year, and he's has over 2,000 all-purpose yards, and he's the second Raider only in franchise history to have accomplished that. The other one was Marcus Allen. So, Raiders offensively have definitely put up the points, but Anthony Finkel says Bradley Weiss coach Brute. But who do you like in the game, though, Anthony Finkel? I mean, that's great. He's a coach. But who do you like? Because you're the guy that's in the standings here. So we'll come back to you in a second. But let's go to the other Saturday game here, and that is the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars here. I mean, there is a path, I guess you could say, for the Jaguars to still make the postseason if they lose this game. But all roads here, I guess, go through Duval Stadium. It's an 8:15 p.m. game, ESPN prime time, and Jaguars have been red hot here. They have definitely turned their season around, and you called that one here, Justin, and what a difference a year makes with a coach and a young quarterback. Also, Travis Etienne, and you've seen a lot there. Defensively, they've improved as well, and Evan Ingram has made some plays there for them, and you're starting to see a team develop here, and the Jaguars have done that, whereas the Tennessee Titans are in a tailspin. They've lost their last 6 games here, and again, as I had pointed out, there's only 3 teams that have made the postseason with the 6-game losing streak. Could the Titans somehow here make it 4? But Vegas here, Justin, has the Jaguars 6.5-point favorites. 40 is the over-under, and what do you think here in this matchup?
I got to give Josh Dobbs some credit. He played pretty well against the Cowboys on that Thursday night about a week and a half ago. Stepping in right off the street to play a football game is never easy. But, and you get Derrick Henry back in this game. Obviously, there was not a need to play him last week with, knowing that you couldn't be eliminated, you couldn't clinch. It was all going to come down to this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I do think the Jaguars are going to struggle a little bit to slow down Derrick Henry. However, I do think Tennessee's defense is a little bit more vulnerable. And with the way Trevor Lawrence is playing, the way guys like Zay Jones and Marvin Jones are playing. You mentioned Evan Ingram and Travis Etienne. Those guys have been huge X factors for this offense, and really, what has led Doug Peterson to see this growth in Trevor Lawrence at quarterback in year number 2. You talk about that big year 1 to year 2 leap. You want to see out of your young quarterback, and we've seen a massive step forward in year 2 from Trevor Lawrence, and he really is one of the more improved players in the NFL, and he's going to lead this team to the postseason. Now, where does it go? It might be a matchup with the Chargers, might be a matchup with the Ravens. We'll see where it ends up, but you got to love the way the Jaguars are playing right now. You mentioned their improvement on defense. They've had some games where they've looked horrendous. They've had some games like against Dallas, like against Detroit. And I know they won the Dallas game, but their defense was hideous. Their defense against Detroit was hideous. And that's really the only game in this last month or two where you were confused. You're just like, they just played very poor. I just had this feeling coming into the season that the Jaguars would be improved. I didn't know it would be this improved. I didn't know they'd go from, a couple wins to here they are sitting at 8-8 going into the final week of the season, and a win clinches the AFC South. Given the state of these teams, given the state of the Titans and the uncertainty, maybe the uncertainty of Mike Vrabel. Could Mike Vrabel be on the hot seat? The GM just got fired recently. The uncertainty at quarterback. I mean, they've clearly already, after a couple of games, they've moved away from Malik Willis. Ryan Tannehill doesn't get you anywhere. The Colts are a mess, right? The Texans are the Texans right now. We are looking at a potential run of sustained dominance by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they could ascend to an 11-win team maybe next year.
They could be, listen, what the Bengals were last year, where they made the jump from 3 to 10 wins, and they made a huge jump, and they went to the Super Bowl. Now, obviously, not saying that the Jaguars will do that, but like you said, there is the possibility that who knows what happens in Tennessee. The Colts are a mess, and Houston's still in a rebuild. And Chris, I mean, certainly a lot on the line here. Could be a maybe changing of the guard here in the AFC South. The Jaguars are starting to emerge, and you've seen talent. Evan Ingram we saw with the Giants, and Travis Etienne, Christian Kirk also with 1,000+ yards, and a coach like Doug Peterson who's got a resume in itself. And there's a Jaguars franchise that really hasn't had that before, so maybe that's been the difference. And the Titans are certainly playing not with a full deck. And give me your thoughts here on who walks away with the AFC South between the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars.
You know what? Jacksonville is playing so good down the stretch. And, like Justin said, we've seen Trevor Lawrence come up big time in his second year. And it's amazing what a difference not just a year makes, but obviously a coaching staff makes as well with him. He's made incredible steps from last year's mess to this year. And this team is playing so well down the stretch. It's one of the hotter teams in the league right now. And Tennessee is just the complete opposite, right? I mean, you got, like you were saying, Joshua Dobbs is quarterbacking now. That's not a good thing. He played admirably against Dallas, but I do not see Tennessee beating Jacksonville this week. So Jacksonville's going to win the division this year. And let's face it, they're probably going to win it next year too. I mean, Tennessee's got no quarterback. Right? I mean, they're going to bring back Tannehill, or
we talked about it last year on the show after the Titans were eliminated by the Bengals, and it was you and Justin and some other people like, well, I don't know about Tannehill, and the record's good, but in terms of his overall play, and now we see what's happened here. I mean,
he's not a guy who excites you. I mean, I know a lot of their offense has been based on what Derrick Henry does, right? But they lose receivers, right? They trade AJ Brown. They replace him with Robert Woods, who is okay, but not the talent of an AJ Brown. Obviously, that was a big trade for the Eagles, but it's just tough. It's tough to see the Titans having any direction right now.
And you know what? And in the playoffs in the NFL, you need your quarterback to make a big play. You just have to. You're not winning with a good running game anymore in the league. You need that quarterback. He has to either drive the whole field down to get into field position or to score a touch. It comes down to that. And you are not winning a championship with Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback. It's as simple as that.
And look, I don't know if it's. I doubt it's this year, but we're going to get to a point where we're going to trust Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And he absolutely could be the guy if the roster stays in good shape. He can absolutely be a guy that takes a team to a Super Bowl. We've seen it. We've seen him win a national championship on the college level, right? We've seen him have success, and to go from year one where he completed 59.6% of his passes, 12 touchdowns, 17 picks, to year two, 66.5 completion percentage, 66.5, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's at 39.01 in terms of yardage going into the Saturday's game.
And I think the 3-to-1 TD to INT ratio stands out to me most because he's keeping the ball and he's giving his team
8
chances
interceptions in 16 games is phenomenal.
Absolutely, and I think in the second half, I'm sure those numbers are probably 4-to-1 or probably a little closer to that. And I think the interception, the percentage ratio is probably even closer to 70 because again, they've been a 6-2 football team the last 8 games, so that shows you there where we are. I mean, listen, I picked Houston last week over Jacksonville, and that was an admitted mulligan because I kind of thought, well, Houston played really well the last 4 weeks, and Jacksonville went down there and blew them out, and I do think that it won't be a blowout here just because there's still a lot on the line, but it's hard not to like Jacksonville right now just because of the fact that the way Jacksonville is played here, they're at home in Duval, and it's a Tennessee team. I mean, they're sputtering. They have not scored much points at all here in this losing streak, and even when they were 7-3, they kind of were just kind of lackadaisical in terms of just how they won games, and certainly right now, I mean, they're a team that definitely is on the ropes. I mean, listen, anything can happen. Could Tennessee win? Sure, because they have the experience. That might be the one thing if you were to pick Tennessee because they've been here before, they're battle tested, but it's really not a good football team right now, and Jacksonville's the better football team, and I think at the end of the day, Jacksonville should prevail, and they'll be a dangerous team. I'll tell you what, I mean, Los Angeles and Jacksonville would be a fun first-round game, and that would be a game. You have 2 young quarterbacks right there, and Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence.
That's a game that's no just because you're the wild card team with a better record, and you think that the South is just going to be a pushover. I wouldn't take Jacksonville lately in the first round. I'll
tell you what, they're going to have a home game. They're going to have a loud crowd there. You're in Jacksonville. I mean, they're going to definitely turn out there. It's probably going to be, I would imagine, a Saturday game there. And I think Los Angeles.
They're good fans. When the Jaguars are good, they're good fans.
No, they definitely listen. You think about a few years back when they went to the AFC Championship game. You think about the run that they had in the late '90s and in the middle of the decade in the 2000s with Brian Leftwich. I mean, they've had some success. Hasn't been a lot, but when they're successful, they definitely turn out there. So
and you know what? We'll see. An interesting thing, right? Sure. If the Chargers go into Jacksonville and they lose, I wonder if the Chargers, since Sean Payton's out there and he's already expressed interest in possibly, coaching the Chargers, I wonder if they get rid of their coach and bring in Sean Payton.
I don't see Dean Spanos being that type of owner that just knee-jerk reaction just because they lose a playoff game. I think he's proud of what he's seen in the first couple of years of Brandon Staley. And look, they've been good. They narrowly missed the playoffs last year.
Last year.
That was a rough way to get knocked out too.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're in the postseason this year. I don't see it. We'll get to them later, but there's one team I could see that's going to the playoffs if they lose first round. That coach is gone.
All right, well, that's certainly an excellent tease. And the Chargers, I believe, won 9 games this year. They've got 10 already. So
they're 10-6, yep.
Yeah, they're moving in the right direction. Again, it's a franchise that is moving in the right direction. Herbert's had some injuries a little bit, but they've definitely played, again, very well in the second. That would be a great matchup. It could be Baltimore as well. That would also be another interesting matchup. But I personally like to see Herbert versus Lawrence. But that's here nor there. Let's go to the 1 o'clock games here in the Sunday hour. And I'll pick some of the games that have less importance because I want to get the brute force on. I kind of want to rile them up with the Steelers. And we'll obviously Patriots, Bills we'll get into as well. But let's go first with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. And I was kind of scratching my head on this one, Justin, not so much for the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a Tampa Bay Buccaneers-like game this season to win the NFC South. And they even kind of tried hard almost to lose that game against the Carolina Panthers. But it's almost to the fact that the Atlanta Falcons are 4-point favorites here. It's 40.5 is the over-under, and I'm kind of confused here. I would say if it was a 1.5 or 2-point spread, maybe because of the obligatory home game. But Falcons, are certainly not as good as the Bucs. I mean, the only thing I could think of is maybe certain regulars are going to sit. Maybe that's what it is. But give me your thoughts here on the NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And speaking of coaches that might have dodged a bullet, that would be Todd Bowles, who certainly who won. And if I could only imagine if the Bucs had not won this division, and I think he would have probably been on the chopping block. But he's not going to be the case. But Bucs Falcons, give me your thoughts. As the Falcons, again, to me, are peculiarly a 4-point favorite with 40.5 as the over-under.
Yeah, what this signals to me is that there's a very real possibility Blaine Gabbert gets into this game at quarterback. You might not see a full 4. This is one of the most difficult things about picking Week 18 or in the past Week 17 when it's the final week of the regular season, because you're not sure which clinched teams are going to sit guys. And I could certainly see while Brady is probably going to start as he normally does, I could see every possibility where he's not playing the full game. There's nowhere for them to go. They're the 4 seed, and that's that, right? So I'm still going to take the Bucs here, just because I'm just not a fan of what I've seen so far from Desmond Ridder. The only player on the team that's really shown me something is the running back Tyler Algier. So I'm still going to take the Bucs. I think they can still muster up, a weak little 17-14 game.
Typical Bucs win, basically. You're telling me typical Bucs win.
Exactly. But and I think anybody who's got any kind of nicks, any kind of nicks and bruises, I think they'll probably sit out. I like the Bucs here.
All right, here, and before I get to you, Chris, we're joined by the man who's, I believe he's in first place in our NFL picks here for our weekly season here on Sportzwire Radio. Well, 2.5, because he's got here by the.
We're not done with this game.
Yeah, so we have John Gonzalez from the Sports Authorities Group. And, John, just before I get to Chris, we picked only so far the Chiefs and the Raiders and the Titans and the Jaguars. And the brute force Brad Weiss will be arriving here shortly. And Anthony Finkel, the napkin Anthony Finkel, was here. And he says that he's not picking his games until tomorrow. So that, to me, shows that he's trying to one-up you, John Gonzalez. He's going to basically go back and watch this. And he's going to go figure out who you didn't pick so he can pick them and try to catch up on you, depending on what it is. Honestly, I actually think it is not fair. It is actually not fair. And at first, when John Gonzalez was telling me this off the air last week, I was like, well, but now I kind of think like that's not fair because we all pick here live every week. And if you want to be in the weekly group, you should be picking the games or at the very least send them to the brute force after we're off the air because it is not fair. Anthony Finkel, I love you to death. We've been friends for over 7 years, but you should be picking these games tonight, not tomorrow at kickoff and see what John Gonzalez picks. That's my opinion. And before I get to you, Chris, John likes the Chiefs, and John likes the Titans here. Ooh, wow. He likes the Titans.
There you go.
Wow. He sees something here that maybe we don't, so he likes the Titans here.
A little bone there, I think.
Well,
all right. One there.
He sees something that we don't, so we'll give him that. Okay. And he also says, nah, come on, Mr. Napkin. So, all right, so the shots are being fired here. Obviously, these guys both love each other, and we love them both. But, Chris, I mean, Bucs and Falcons. Bucs won a typical Bucs game this season to clinch the NFC South. They were up 9. Kicker misses the extra point, and I'm like, boy, this might mean something. Panthers have timeouts. They go out there, and Darnold drives down the field, and they get the field goal, and then they actually get the ball back, and then they almost kind of found a way. They get to midfield, and they were able to almost kind of make certainly Bucs fans sweat, like our very good friend Ron Laird, but they are the NFC South champs. And the Falcons are, again, surprisingly to me, 4-point favorites. Maybe Justin explains it for us. But what do you think here now in this meaningless NFC South matchup between the NFC South champions for the second consecutive year, which the Bucs, I believe, they don't think they've ever done this before in franchise history. I'm pretty sure I saw that somewhere. And the Atlanta Falcons, one of the brute forces beloved teams here.
Yeah, this is one of those games where if we weren't picking it, I wouldn't even think about this game, to be honest, because Tampa Bay probably doesn't, like you said, Brady might start the game, but he's probably going to be gone after the first quarter, if that. So, and if it's Blaine Gabbert, that's not a good sign either. I mean, I'll throw Atlanta just because I think they'd want to win to kind of finish off the season on a high note, maybe. Yeah, I don't know, but I guess I'll take Atlanta instead of Tampa Bay just to throw a different one in there.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly see that. John says he's stand corrected. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He says, no mistake, I like the Jags. So he says he wants to just confirm he likes the Chiefs, the Jags, and now the Bucs. All right, that's fair. John, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you're a great guy. And if you said that, no, I get it. Listen, you know what? Maybe he just didn't hear the other team. I don't know. That there is certainly that. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. If Anthony Finkel, who's picking it like 4:29 p.m., I would say, well, I don't know, but I'm only for one reason only. It's kind of a dumb reason, but I'm going to go with the Bucs because, again, another stat. I believe in Brady's career, he hasn't had a losing season, if I'm not mistaken, as a starting quarterback. I know 2000 first year in the league. Patriots were 5-11, I believe.
That's the only team he's been on. That's the only team he's been on that's had a losing record was the 2000 Patriots.
And since he's been a starting quarterback, he's not had a losing season, and I kind of think that means something to Brady, kind of like Tomlin with Pittsburgh. I won't have as much enthusiasm with the Steelers with that, but I just think for whatever reason, I think the Bucs win a Bucs type of game, and I do think 9-8 kind of means something, and in a way, they would actually have a little bit of momentum because they won their last 3 games. They go into it, and like Chris Collinsworth said 2 weeks ago, and even listening to Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson on the call after the Bucs and Panthers game, you're still, whether it's Dallas or anybody else, you're going on the road to face Tom Brady, and it's records don't mean anything because it's still Tom Brady. So I kind of think that the Bucs win here, and the 9-8 means something, and we'll see if that carries over. And John thanks me here. All right, so you know what? Let's go to another matchup. Speaking of meaningless games that don't matter, and well, maybe it does matter, at least for a coach, and that's the another NFC South matchup, the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. And Justin, Saints here are 3.5-point favorites. 42.5 is the over-under, and Saints have played, I guess, okay football. They've kind of played, I guess, a little bit better in the second half, and the Panthers definitely have played much improved in the second half, but unfortunately, they didn't make the coaching change earlier in the year with Matt Rule, and Sam Darnold showed some moxie, although he certainly had a questionable fumble in the fourth quarter. If anybody was watching the game, that gave the Bucs a chance there, and they took the lead there, but could the Panthers be playing for something? Could the Saints be playing for something? But it is still a game that doesn't mean anything technically in the standings. But Justin, Saints are 3.5-point favorites. 42.5 is the over/under. And what do you think here in this matchup?
Yeah, I really want to commend the job that Steve Wilkes has done as the interim head coach for the Carolina Panthers. Ever since they traded Christian McCaffrey, ever since they traded Robbie Anderson, the guys have played hard. Like Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman have been a tremendous backfield duo. PJ Walker played okay when he was in, and then as he got healthy, they went back to Sam. They went to Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold's played some okay football. I know he had some killer turnovers last week, and fumble through a couple of interceptions. You know, you're gonna kind of get that with him, but you're also gonna get some nice throws, and you're gonna get some really awesome plays, and look, Sam Darnold's made plays. He's also been aided by a really good run game, but and the Saints are just, I don't know. I know they're playing better football the last couple of weeks. The Saints just don't excite me at all. Like Andy Dalton just doesn't do anything for me, and Alvin Kamara hasn't really been Alvin Kamara this year. The Saints defense hasn't been that great. I'm going to take the Panthers here in a close one. I just think the Panthers will play one more strong performance. And I don't know what David Tepper's thinking but I would bring back Steve Wilkes. I would.
Yeah, I mean, you heard obviously during the week that Jim Harbaugh met with the owner. I saw that on the ESPN ticker, and
Yeah.
it is a seat that, what, listen, I mean, it's Carolina, it's a team, you're in a division, maybe you could kind of get a springboard quickly, maybe back into the postseason, because again, who knows what happens with Brady here. And before I get to you, Chris, John Gonzalez says Sean Payton will be back in New Orleans next year.
That's
Who
an
knows?
interesting one. I don't know. That's an interesting one.
I heard that too, and he was going to bring Brady with him. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Stephen Ross would certainly love to bring Tom Brady.
And listen,
you almost see that all the time.
And he's not coming back to coach Andy Dalton, right? So he's got to get somebody there.
Yeah. You bring up Stephen Ross, though, Tom. I know it's year one. I don't know that he's going to fire Mike McDaniel after 1 year.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I know the season's gone south, and they went from 8-3 to 8-8, and if they lose to the Jets 8-9, I don't think he's going to fire Mike McDaniel after 1 year.
Yeah, he's got quarterback issues there, right? Tua getting hurt.
Tua, Bridgewater, yep.
Yeah, so
he brings in Mike Glennon because he likes the name Mike. They think the name's really cool.
I see that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to them at the end here, and I believe Chris, you would picked here in this matchup New Orleans, right?
This one, are they even keeping score in this game?
New Orleans is 3.5 point favorites. 42.5 is the over under. It's a tough one. It's one of those games. I mean, maybe both teams are playing for something. I mean, New Orleans has played better. Carolina has been improved.
I'll take Carolina. I need to make up some moves here, so I'll take Carolina.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering with the brute force here. I mean, he said, I'm going to be here, and I was so curious on where we were in the standings. But the brute force is a busy guy, but we'll catch up with that. And he also says Mike Glennon, Giraffe Neck. Yep. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with Carolina. I'm kind of probably bite the bullet here and say, you know what, I'm going to go with Carolina. And John says he likes the Saints as well, so thank you, John, for giving me that. Yeah, I'm going to go with Carolina because I do think I like what I've seen with them over the past 4 or 5 weeks. I think they're playing with moxie and kind of a wild card here. Sam Darnold might be playing for something. I mean, he could be auditioning for somewhere, and he played pretty well the last couple of weeks. I mean, and their running game has been pretty good at times. I mean, it's 280 yards against our beloved Lions on Sportswire. So,
they had like 360.
Okay, all right, with 280 in the first half, right? Like 280 in the first half. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, yeah. So I mean, and they moved the ball pretty well last week. I mean, Carolina looks like they're moving the ball well, and ironically, you lose Christian McCaffrey, and your actually offense plays better. And John also wants to tell me, yeah, it's a good point. The Saints did beat the Eagles, and I could see where you're coming from with that. I mean, look, both teams might be playing for something, so I am going to bite the bullet here and go with Carolina just because I think that those players might be motivated for Steve Wilkes to come back. What is he, 5-6 there since he took the job, or 5-5, something like that? And, that might mean something. He might be auditioning for something. So
sure,
that's one game here that we go down here. Let's go to another meaningless game because I'm really trying to give the brute force here. In wrestling, they would say, I'm giving him a hold to buy him time for the comeback. That's the line that we'd use here. And we'll go to a game that doesn't mean anything at all. Well, maybe it does mean something, and maybe for a coach here, because we're going to have a lot of coaches on the hot seat. That is the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts here. And Dustin, the Colts here are 2.5 point. Yeah, this is one of those games like you would want to avoid like the plague for a
pick. That game.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that would be one of those if you went to like vividseats.com, which is a ticket reseller. I am sure you could find dirt cheap tickets and get a really good deal for. I'm sure that's one of those. That's like going to an Oakland A's game this year. That's exactly what that's going to be like. That's probably the same thing here. But Justin, the Houston Texans played well the last 3 or 4 weeks before last week against Jacksonville, and the Indianapolis Colts, I mean, I am sure they are going to have a whole lot of turnover there next season, but Colts here are small favorites, 38.5. I'm very curious also what happens with Lovie Smith down there in Houston. I was reading some different things, and I'm not quite sure what happens there, but maybe there's one team that might have a little bit more to play for, but give me your thoughts here between a meaningless matchup here, as there ever could be one here, between the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts.
First of all, the Texans can't keep canning coaches after 1 year. That's just not fair. you hired David Culley in an impossible situation.
Very tough situation.
And then you hire Lovie Smith. I mean, you can't keep canning guys after 1 year. Listen, Lovie Smith has a track record. I would 100% go with him next year. I think he could turn it around. Obviously, barring what happens with I believe the Bears, they're going to end. The Texans are going to end up with the number 1 pick, and that means they're going to have Bryce Young on their team next year. And the only problem is they have that tie, which is going to end up which was against the Colts, by the way, earlier in the year, which, by the way, could come back to bite them because, I think the Texans are going to win this game. I do. I don't like Sam Ehlinger in this matchup for the Colts. The Colts are dead man walking.
I feel like after the Vikings game where they blew that massive lead, it's almost like,
they're done.
How do you come back? How do you come back from that?
They're the walking dead right now. They're gonna have a new coach next year, obviously. Because Saturday's the interim, and the Texans, other than last week, have played some inspiring football and played some really close games against some really good opponents. So I like the Texans to win this battle.
I personally would like to see Lovie Smith get another shot there because I feel like he's a good football man. I know
with guys after 1 year.
Yeah, I know with
Illinois that job.
No question. And John Gonzalez said this is a tough week to pick games. Yeah, it definitely is. Absolutely. There's some undesirable matchups, but you kind of get that sometimes in the league. And I would like to see Lovie come back because I know he got a tough kind of run there in Illinois, and it didn't really work out there too much. But they had a couple of big wins, but other than that, not much success. But we'll see after this game, and we'll see next week when we talk about coaches that were fired. But Chris, again, this is really one of those games. It's almost like, I guess it's eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I mean, Anthony Finkel, I'm sure, is doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo when it comes to this game. But Colts are the obligatory home favorite here. It's 38.5, and I mean, I don't know what more else is to say about this matchup.
No, there isn't much else. Like you said, I think the Colts, since that game where they blew that lead against the Vikings, there's just nothing there anymore. And they've tried different quarterbacks, nothing's working. Taylor's been out, so Colts just got nothing, and there's gonna be major changes going on in that team. So I'm gonna go with the Texans, and like you said, hopefully Lovie Smith survives. I think he should, because outside of getting Sean Payton in there and revamping that, he's got to stay, because who's gonna come in and do any better than Lovie Smith anyway with that team? I don't care what they do in the offseason, So,
with Harbaugh, what do you give all the money in the world to Harbaugh? Because I made the point to somebody the other day. It may be as good as it's going to get in Michigan because they're expanding the playoff field, and maybe he sees this is the opportunity. I don't know.
And think about it.
With the scandal that just came down too.
Right. He might leave, but I don't know if he'd want to leave for Houston because.
But would Bryce Young be attractive to him?
Maybe. I don't know.
Would the thought of Bryce Young be attractive to him? Because the front office at some point should have enough cap room to spend money to get good players around the new young quarterback.
It's possible.
Also, listen, you're in a division, again, maybe you could say, you know what, maybe I can come back quick. Look, could Jacksonville repeat this past season? We spoke about that. Yes, possibly. But, you look at, is Tennessee on a rebuild? Indianapolis, I think, is a train wreck.
When I talked about the Jaguars before, that's exactly the point I made, that there's no direction right now with the Titans or the Colts. The only team right now that has a true direction is the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they're going up. So if you're the Houston Texans, you could absolutely look at this opportunity and says, Jaguars aren't that great. Like, why can't we be them in a couple years?
And it's a franchise that really hasn't. Yeah, and it's a franchise that really hasn't had prolonged success other than the late 90s in the years with Coughlin. 96, 97, 98, 99. Yeah. Other than that, they haven't had, in their franchise's history, they haven't had that much success. So
and the Texans overall have been pretty good, actually.
Yeah, Gary Kubiak won a lot of divisions there, and they won a lot of games, and they've had recent success. And John says if Harbaugh leaves, he probably would take the Colts job. Yeah, it's a possibility.
Ex-quarterback there, yeah.
And he played there, and he had had success. Don't forget, he was the guy, and Chris will probably remember this, and so will John. He was the guy that I believe it was in the AFC Championship game against the Steelers. Of course, the beloved Steelers on Sportzwire. That had that crazy Hail Mary that
At
was
the end,
almost
yeah.
caught. Yep, that was. I still
Almost.
remember it. It was
Yep.
1996, 95, season 96. And I remember it. The reason I remember it because Chris will chuckle about this. Growing up in Brooklyn, right afterwards, I went outside on the sidewalk, and we all tried for weeks, tried to recapture that play, and
Yes.
we never could get it right.
Yep.
So that's kind of the old days. He would appreciate this because he was a Brooklyn guy as well. So I thought he would have appreciated that. But I'm going with the Texans here because I just do think that they might be inspired. They do need a win here. Maybe it is for something. You go into the season that you have a little momentum. You're getting the number one pick. I mean, I do think it means something. I think those guys like playing for Lovie Smith. Lovie's always been a good football man. I've always respected his career and what he's done. He's always been somebody you want to root for here. And just to me, I think also what it comes down to is Colts at quarterback, and I do believe that in karma almost. The Colts, since blowing that epic lead against the Vikings, they've done jack. What have they scored? Like
the problem with both
points?
of those the problem with both of those situations is ownership, right? The Texans is a complete mess with ownership.
100%. Yep.
The McNairs are just
And the Colts, I don't know if would the Colts give Harbaugh complete control of that. I don't know if Irsay would give that up for Harbaugh. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
He's not going to go from Michigan to Indianapolis unless he has complete control, and you got to pay him $10 million a year.
And listen, and before we get to the next game, if you think about coaches that have had success in college and the NFL at that level, I mean, Harbaugh's in rarefied air. What are we talking about? Pete Carroll and I guess
Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson, I guess John Robinson years ago, I think, right? Dick Vermeil, I think, was college in the NFL. He had, I guess, close to that success. But, I mean, in terms of winning percentage, it's really him and Pete Carroll. I mean, Pete Carroll had a lot of success in college and the pros, and I think that's, very few people. And John also says, yes, captain comeback in 96. Yes, I believe they were a wild card team, kind of snuck in, and they wound up beating, if I'm not mistaken, they beat the Chargers, who won the AFC the year prior. They beat Marty Schottenheimer, God rest his soul, then the Steelers game, but that's here nor there. Let's go to another matchup here that sort of doesn't mean much, but maybe it does impact the Houston Texans, Justin, because I'm really trying to buy time for the brute force here. I guess he's just unfortunately here nor there, but that is the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. Vikings are playing for something here still. We'll see where they end up seeding wise, but Vikings starting to look like the Vikings we thought they were going to look like here, Justin, at times here. And Green Bay definitely caught them on the ropes. And it's a Vikings team where I'm still trying to figure this out here. A 12-win team that's minus 15 in point differential. I mean, I can't think of a situation I've ever seen like this before. But they are 7.5-point favorites here because, of the news I saw about Justin Fields not playing. So it means the NFL rushing record for quarterbacks is safe for a year. But the Bears could be playing for that number one pick, depending on how things work, and the Vikings could be playing for a higher seeding. So, I mean, who do you think here wins in a matchup that probably the Vikings need a hell of a lot more?
Yeah, that's where the unfortunate situation comes in if you're the Houston Texans, because the Bears have Justin Fields, right? So there's no inclination for them to take a quarterback at the number one overall pick, which means that pick will be highly tradable. If you're the Bears getting the number one pick, and they're starting Nathan Peterman at Mr. Pick. All he would do was throw interceptions when he was with the Buffalo Bills pre-Josh Allen. I mean, my God, the Vikings are frauds. They're good enough to beat the Bears. Let's put it that way. And you know what? They're not going to, and they're going to actually win this game by more than one score. They're 11-0 in one-score games. Their only win was Week 1. Against the Packers, that was by more than one score. So I'm sorry. The Bears are going to be steamrolled in this game. And you know what? The Vikings will go balls to the wall because they want that number 2 seed, right? They want to be able to have a home matchup in the divisional round. And honestly, I would avoid the Giants, honestly.
And I think the Vikings could finish up no lower than 3. So I think that's where and I think that would be the Giants.
Because the Bucs are locked in at 4.
And listen, the Giants played the Vikings very well here, and I want to echo the brute force what John Gonzalez has said here. Well, look at who showed up here. My arch rival, the brute force here. The brute force, by the way, obviously, good to be with you. We picked the Chiefs and Raiders, Titans, Jaguars. We picked the Bucks and Falcons, and the Panthers, Saints. So what I did for you, the Brute Force, is in wrestling terms, I kind of put almost you in a hole to kind of buy you time to come back here. So I didn't pick the great games. I picked the more lousier ones so we could get you on here at the right time. And good to be with you here once again. And I was curious before I get your thoughts and Chris's thoughts on this game. We'll come back to you at the end and who you like in these other games. And I mean, where are we in the standings right now? We had a guest appearance from the Napkin, Anthony Finkel, who said, by the way, which I think this should be illegal. Anthony Finkel said he's not picking his games until tomorrow, but he should be picking his games by the time we're off the air. I think that's an unfair advantage. But tell us right now who is right now ahead between John Gonzalez and the Napkin, Anthony Finkel.
Yeah, so John Gonzalez is still holding on. He gained the game last week. He's now 155 and 79. Big Fink is 152 and 82. So he's 3 games back of John Gonzalez. I think the bigger story is actually you, Tom Bryce. You've now gotten yourself in very prime position. You're 1 game behind Chris and 3 behind me. So you might be in 3rd place by next week. So it's definitely a downfall for me and Chris, who are now way far behind John Gonzalez. But, props to you and Justin, by the way, who's in the mix as well.
Well, I'm going to plead the fifth and all that because obviously we don't want to get in too much in that because we love everybody here on Sportswire. But I'm going to go right at you, the Brute Force, because you were the guy it seemed like that was going to be in first, and you were the guy. And I think it's more, as in the words of Tupac, it's all about you, the Brute Force. It's all about your downfall here pretty much. So, I mean, I'm going to come to you now because you know what? We have Chris. I'll get to him in a second. And, I mean, Vikings, Bears, certainly Bears seem like they are definitely tanking. You're trying to get that number 1 pick, and the Vikings are desperately trying to hang on and maybe get that 2 seed. But then again, if I'm the Vikings right now, the Brute Force, I wouldn't want any part if it ends up with the Green Bay Packers or somehow, God willing, our beloved Detroit Lions. But I think the Vikings are really starting to show that the frauds that they might be, I think as Chris has said famously a couple weeks ago, but I would think here that you're going to pick the Vikings unless you have some master strategy here. And give me your thoughts and more here on this matchup.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's just like basketball. I do not have an 11-point shot that I can hit right now. Basically, I have to disagree with John on everything. And we know his strategy is to pick what I pick a lot. So, listen, it is what it is. But, yeah, I'm picking the Vikings. I heard Justin just say about Nathan Peterman. Who the hell could trust that guy, for sure. But, listen, the one thing I'm worried about, though, even though it's Nathan Peterman, this Minnesota Vikings team could never win decisively. It's like every time you think they should win by 2 touchdowns or you think they should win by a couple of scores, they never do it. Now, obviously, can they do it this week? Sure. I do believe they can, but I'm not too confident on it. So the spread, yeah, I'll take them, but I'm not too confident because they always find ways for some reason not to cover the spread and not to win decisively. I do think they should, though, against the Bears.
Them and the Chiefs, by the way, we spoke about this at the top. Chiefs are 5-10-1 against the spread this year, and the Vikings are probably right around that. But, Chris, I mean, Vikings are 7.5-point favorites. The Bears are, I guess you'd say, playing for that number 1 pick, and Vikings desperately need a win here. But then again, I'm not even that confident about the Vikings right now if they could go out of the first round, considering who they might potentially play. But give me your thoughts here on in this matchup and anything else you want to say.
Yeah, I mean, without Justin Fields, I think Chicago has no shot. At least with him, they would have had some kind of a shot, maybe.
Right.
But without him, they probably got no shot in this game. Minnesota's still going to be playing because they could get that number 1 seed, with a couple of losses. But, San Fran would have to lose. The Eagles would have to lose. But, Minnesota should be an easy victory for them.
Well, it better be. Let me get to a bunch of John Gonzalez comments. Harbaugh's had success everywhere he's coached. Absolutely. I mean, 49ers, he turned them around, and the 49ers actually struggled before Harbaugh was there and took them to, I think, 2 NFC championship games.
And Stanford, right before it. Yep. Everything.
I think he had 2 years in Stanford, right? Was it 2 years? I think he was there and won there. And that's a program that's had mixed success there. And John likes the Vikings. No surprise here. He says, come on, Brute, stay out of last place. Get a few picks in. Guys, can we please help the – well, I mean, I guess guys like Billy McInerney and Joey Bostrom are involved who I guess have, maybe fewer wins. I don't know if that kind of ties into who's in last. But, I mean –
the only one that can help him is Brute. I mean, is John himself. John would have to pick against Brute or something.
Why is he even worried about me?
Wants to help him.
So
want to help
you
pick against us.
Well, you are mathematically, technically alive still, the Brute Force. Is that correct?
Right.
Mathematically,
We are, but just like Chris said, I mean, if he wants to pick against us to make it interesting, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, you're mathematically alive still, so we'll see. But I am going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, how could you not pick the Vikings in this match? Everything we just said to go with the Bears. I mean, the Bears have been in these spots week after week, and they've shown up and did nothing. The Lions, they did nothing. The Bills, they did nothing in. And, I mean, they did play okay for a while against the Eagles, but without Fields, I mean, who's having an historic season from a rushing standpoint, they lost their offense. I mean, hard to win with a quarterback you've never heard of. But I guess that's kind of my thoughts here. But the Brute Force, let's go to another matchup that does have some implications. And I'm going to hold off on the Steelers for a little bit. I want to go to the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, we spoke about the top. Thankfully, though, that Damar Hamlin is doing better. And obviously, we wish him well. We give our thoughts and prayers. Very, very happy to hear that. And I'll be curious to see how the Bengals come off after that emotional situation there. And then another team, I'm so curious how they bounce back, is the Baltimore Ravens, who found a way yet again to lose another close game. And boy, was I pumped up about that, the Brute Force, with the beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. Can't wait to pick that game for the last one at the 1 o'clock hour here. But Bengals are touchdown favorites here. It's 40.5 is the over-under. And I mean, I kind of don't know, in a way, kind of call me crazy on this, how both these teams kind of come off games where they had different things happen. Obviously, Ravens lose a close game and then they wind up losing the division technically off that. And then the Bengals, who had such a, again, I mean, I couldn't even imagine it or foster a situation on how you go back on the field after that. I mean, what do you think happens here, and who walks away with a win that does mean something for both teams?
Yeah, obviously, it's a tough situation to recover from with the Cincinnati Bengals, obviously seeing what they saw and witnessing what they witnessed. But ultimately, sometimes these type of things happen, and it brings the best out of your team. And they come back the next week, and they root for each other, and they communicate more, and they just play together more. And I think that right now, you've seen it even before this happened, that the Bengals are just the better team right now. They're just playing better as a team. And this right here, I think, is going to make them even stronger as a team just because of the adversity that happened, and they have to now work through it. And I think a guy like Zach Taylor deserves a lot of credit as well. He's been a great coach, did a lot of great things. He's had a great season this year again, and he's a great leader. So I'm going to take the Bengals. I think they will bounce back. They will win at home with their fans. And ultimately, the Ravens, I've said it from a while ago, I'm really not sold on this team. They are not a prototypical playoff team that you guys should be excited about right now, considering how they performed last week against the Steelers. I'm not that confident in them. And, listen, the Lamar Jackson situation continues to get more interesting. Let's see if he's even in a Ravens uniform next year, Tom.
Well, I'd like to see him suit up for this season, because obviously there's still some games to be at hand here. But Justin, again, Ravens and Bengals, and I'm so curious in this matchup on how these two teams kind of bounce back for different reasons. Certainly the Ravens here had a difficult loss to their arch nemesis, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and blowing yet another lead in the fourth quarter. And then the Bengals, who had obviously just a horrific thing, and to be able to, I guess, watch that, you almost kind of second guess, and as a human being, what happens on the field and such. I'm sure that goes in the back of their minds. But Bengals here are touchdown favorites. 40.5 is the over-under. And give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the Baltimore season has really, clearly it's taken a downturn since the injury to Lamar Jackson. And the quarterback questions continue. They've officially listed Tyler Huntley as questionable, which means he's uncertain to play Sunday. And that means they're turning to Anthony Brown if Huntley doesn't go.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens offensively have taken a massive hit, and their defense hasn't. Their defense has held their own, but the Bengals are just a better team. The Bengals have been firing on all cylinders. You would hope with the positive news that we've received on Damar Hamlin, that both the Bills and the Bengals can refocus a little bit and, kind of feel good consciously knowing that, yeah, he might still be in the hospital, but he's doing better, and, you can kind of, start to process things a little bit and move forward. And I think the Bengals are come out firing here, and I think the Bengals are going to win this big matchup.
All right, here, fair enough. And Chris, certainly Bengals and Ravens coming off certainly difficult games for different reasons, but Bengals are touchdown favorites. 40.5 is the over-under, and both teams are still playing for something in different positioning and such. But give me your thoughts here on who walks away with the W.
Yeah, I think without Lamar Jackson, even with him, they weren't playing great either. So I don't think they have any shot since he's going to come in with a lot of emotion, obviously after Monday night's game. So since he's going to go into the playoffs, obviously on a 7-8 game winning streak.
Yep.
So
and they started 0-2. They started 0-2 to start the season.
Yeah.
So look at where they've come since.
Pretty amazing. And you know, and we always talk about the Super Bowl losers always kind of take a step back the following year, but it seems like Cincinnati's doing just the opposite. I mean, going into the playoffs as, you know, one of the hottest teams. So I would not want to see this team at all. Them in Buffalo, I don't know what, you know, both teams are going to get to the playoffs with all of this emotion from that Monday night game. And, you know, it could go either way. What happens when they play against each other, that's a whole other story. But in this game, you got to go Cincinnati.
All right, fair enough here. And let me get to John Gonzalez's points. Zach Taylor has become my guy, a great coach in person, and he likes the Cincinnati Bengals. And I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals because I do believe in emotions. I do believe that these guys will be fired up. And you know, you look at the Ravens team, and they just, I mean, they're 10-6, but they've been unimpressive. I mean, they've just been an unimpressive football team. And you look at them, and every game's the same. They're almost, again, I think Chris made the point last week on the show, they're like the Vikings of the AFC, and almost like every game is kind of the same with them. And it's kind of hard to really get a gauge on them and where they are. I mean, they've only scored 334 points, and it's a team, you know, without Lamar Jackson. They've struggled, and I think one of the reasons the Steelers were able to beat them is time of possession. And it's a Ravens team that struggled, I think, in terms of time of possession. I think here against Cincinnati in that crowd, I kind of think Bengals will be be up here, and they'll make sure that
Minnesota has like weapons on that team, right?
Jefferson,
the Ravens got nothing. I mean,
but also too, you have to factor in who normally plays quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, right? It's not an offense designed for wide receivers.
No,
with the way Lamar Jackson runs the football, and what we've seen time and time again is Lamar can't play a full season. So you really want to pay him a big contract? I don't know, man. I don't know.
Somebody's gonna, right? If it's not the Ravens, it'll be somebody.
Well, we're going to find out certainly in the offseason. And speaking of teams also that were in the same predicament, or unfortunate predicament that we saw on Monday night, the Brute Force, we're going to go to the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. And who would have thought right now, despite all of this, that the New England Patriots could return to the postseason, because they're the team right now that's in the 7th seed because of all things that worked out. They were able to beat Miami, and our Jets have certainly obviously gone south with their season. And Buffalo, though, I would have to imagine is going to play with more emotion than you think the Bengals have emotion. I am sure the Bills are going to be playing emotion like we've never seen a team I could ever think of here in this instance. It's a Patriots team that, you know, has kind of struggled as well, and they do have something to play for. But I mean, the Brute Force, I don't want to spoil who I'm going for, but Bills are 7-point favorites. 42.5 is the over/under. I mean, I'm actually surprised that it's not more like a 9-point spread here, considering with all the emotions in Buffalo and that environment. But I mean, give me your thoughts here on this matchup between the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills, where there's still a lot on the line for both teams.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. You know, and I think similar to what we just talked about, I think as you mentioned, Tom, it's going to be a very similar thing. Buffalo is going to play very inspired. They're going to play with a lot of passion, a lot of dedication. And, you know, listen, another team that deserves a lot of credit when it comes to McDermott and the rest of their front office for how professional they've been over the last couple of days in their press conferences. So they deserve a lot of props for obviously what they dealt with and what this has dealt with the team and how they've handled it. So ultimately, I think Buffalo is similar to Cincinnati. Is going to come out fired up on their home field against a rival who obviously they know they want to beat. And listen, the Patriots, Listen, I mean, I just can't believe they're in the playoffs right now. They actually are the team that's currently in. I don't think they will make the playoffs, obviously, because they're going to lose. But ultimately, they're looking at those 2 games against the Jets, and that's really the reason why they're there.
Exactly. Yep. Especially the second game where they won it on a punt.
I mean, those 2 games are the reason why they're in this position. And listen, they've had the same, issues with quarterback, just like the Jets have. But again, they have a really good coach in Belichick, and they've made things happen and won some games. But they don't deserve to be in there, nor does anyone want to see the Patriots in the playoffs just because of viewership, not because of their team, because no one wants to watch them play. So let's hope that they lose. Buffalo will definitely win, in my opinion. The spread, I actually think 7 is fair, Tom. I think I'll take 7 points.
All right, that's fair, and certainly I'm hoping the New England Patriots are not making the playoffs. I hope that you'll figure it out here at the next pick, who I want to make the playoffs. I'm sure a lot of the world knows who I'm going to want. But Justin here, New England, again, for now is the last team in the AFC playoff situation, but they are in Buffalo, and that place is going to be fired up. It's almost going to be, I would have to say, like a Super Bowl-like atmosphere. There are obviously a lot of emotions. Damar Hamlin on their minds, and it's also a team that also has playoff implications when it comes to seeding still on their mind, but they are 7-point favorites. I'm still a little surprised it's only 7, but Justin, give me your thoughts here. Is New England is on the road here still with a win could return to the postseason, and Buffalo is also playing, depending on mathematicals, the number 1 seed, and they are 7-point favorites. 42.5 is the over-under.
Yeah, I'm surprised as well. It's only 7, and this might be the first and only time you'll ever hear me say this. I feel bad for the New England Patriots here. Give me Buffalo by 70 here. I mean, come on. with everything that's going on, how are they not just going to go in there and blow the doors off the Patriots? I mean, this has massacre written all over it. I know Bill doesn't usually have his teams get blown out like that, but you know what? With everything that's gone on this week, with the positive energy that's come over the last couple of days, I think that the Bills are out for blood. I mean, they are going for the jugular with the Patriots, and I think they're going to win big.
Oh, no question. That very well could be the case. And Chris and John Gonzalez has a line I'll say after you pick, just for all intents and purposes. But New England, again, they are the last team alive here in this AFC playoff picture, and Buffalo is still playing on, depending for some luck, they could still be the number 1 seed, but I know a lot of emotions are going to be there in Orchard Park, and does Buffalo win one here for DeMar and going away, or maybe I'm missing something?
Yeah, no, I think you guys have said it. I mean, just the emotion alone. I mean, the phone call they got today from him, the video, and to see him talking, and, that was like a jolt of emotion, of energy, and everything else. They got to come out and just destroy New England. This would be an easy victory, not an easy victory, but without a doubt, an emotional victory for Buffalo. And heading into the playoffs with this kind of emotion, like I said with Cincinnati, they're 2 teams that you just don't want to play right now because they're playing on so much emotion. And then I know Buffalo's obviously not playing with their with their starting safety now, but still, Buffalo's going to win big, and it's a team that you could see them going to the Super Bowl. It would be just perfect the way, obviously because of Monday night and everything. I would not mind it. I'm not a Buffalo fan, and trust me, they're in my most hated teams, I guess, but
well, they've tortured the Jets. If you think about it, they have tortured the Jets over the last 40 years.
And not to toot my horn or anything, but I did have Buffalo over Philly in the Super Bowl before the season started.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yes, I did.
Not that if that's going to happen, but we'll see. But still, Buffalo should win easily. New England is just all. I don't like you said. Without the Jet games, they would not even be in this situation. And incredibly, if they lose, then that opens up the door for Miami. And if Miami loses, that opens up the door for Brute's favorite team. So we'll see.
Oh, that's the next one. Oh, I cannot wait for that.
Amazing what's going to happen.
It's almost like last season for them. It's almost like the same
unbelievable
situation. And let me get to John Gonzalez because he has a few thoughts. He likes the Buffalo Bills. He says, how can anyone pick against Buffalo? He says Pat's got the worst possible opponent at this time. It's kind of karma if you think about it for the Patriots for all those years. It's almost like karma.
Exactly.
And he says here, Miami is getting it. Well, that'll be our last game that we'll pick. But yeah, I'm going with Buffalo, and I would go with Buffalo regardless of unfortunately what happened with Damar Hamlin, just because I think Buffalo is the better football team, and I just can't imagine New England going into Orchard Park with this Patriots team to go there and win because, listen, they basically lucked out against Miami and beat a third-string quarterback at the end of the game, and they're a team that is giving away their games in their own right, like the Brute Force accurately said. It's basically because of the Jets games that the Patriots are actually in this situation, so it's almost, to me, impossible to pick New England just for different reasons here. And the Brute Force Bradley Weiss. This is the game that I cannot wait to ask your thoughts. I was almost tempted to do it last, but we do these things chronologically, and we're actually having a great flow tonight. And that is, of course, your beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. Here we go, Steelers. And boy, do you want to talk about turnarounds here and resurgence. And that was kind of the theme of our show earlier on Sportswire Radio with ALP, booker and promoter of Knockout Wrestling. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have, since TJ Watt has come back, they've been a different football team. And Kenny Pickett, in his own right, has been a very, very serviceable quarterback. And they've had some weapons. Najee Harris, I think that they've also gotten some wide receiver and tight end help. And it's a Steelers team that's kind of winning the way the Steelers have always won here. And Mike Tomlin is on the verge here for making history, joining one of three other coaches with hopefully 16 consecutive seasons over 500, and just maybe a Steelers way return to the postseason. It's a Cleveland Browns team that's going to try and spoil this year. I know where you're going to be going in this matchup here, and the Browns actually are playing a little bit better football, and they got to win against Washington in kind of a lethargic game. But 1 o'clock here, I would imagine, it is going to be loud there in Pittsburgh, and I know where you're going here with this matchup. I know the world knows where you're going with here, the Brute Force. So here we go, the Brute Force Brad Weiss. The Steelers, you and I, our beloved Pittsburgh Steelers, 2.5-point favorites over the Browns. 40.5 is the over-under, and what do you think?
Well, first of all, let me say this before I make this pick, all right? I want to give Tom Bryce a shout out for that video that he had last week. All right,
he got a lot of views on Instagram.
First of all, a lot of views. I'll tell you one thing: there were people that I didn't even know would mention it that actually came up to me. You got crushed by Tom Bryce on Instagram. I'm like, what?
Wow.
I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm like, all right. Well, you know what? Listen, I've said it from everybody who said it. I said I deserved it. And the reason why I deserved it was because of what I said. Every week I said the Steelers stink. They're horrible. They're not going to win 4 games. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, and I was wrong the whole season. I've admitted to that last week, okay? And what I'm going to say now to Tom Bryce, and I'm not happy to say it, but I did say it, and I did allude to it last week, is that Mike Tomlin will not have a losing season this year. Mike Tomlin will win this Sunday, and the Steelers are going to be 9-8. With that being said, I'll hold my thoughts later to whether or not I think the Steelers are going to make the playoffs or not. Okay? But I do think they're going to win against the Browns. I know the Browns are playing better, okay, but the Steelers are playing really well right now, especially on the defensive side. Defensively, with Watt back, they've been a different team. They've been a different defense, and I think that's the reason why I'm confident in them in winning. Offensively, Pickett's been great. Maybe not amazing, but, good enough to win them games, and he's clutch. Let's just say that. He's clutch. He makes
Raiders and the Ravens, I mean, back-to-back weeks for a rookie in that spot? I mean, wow.
It's unbelievable. He's clutch. He's doing what they need, and he's definitely their future quarterback. So I'm going to take the Steelers to win. They get to their 9-8, but we shall see if they make the playoffs.
And that's totally fair. I think that the Steelers still need a lot of help. I know they got it last year, but we'll find out here. But, Justin, Steelers have certainly had quite a turnaround here. It looked like the Brute Force was going to be right here earlier in the year. I remember being ridiculed and maybe rightfully so. I'm going to try to be humble about it here on Sportswire Radio, but Steelers do have a chance, regardless for history, for Mike Tomlin, 16 straight seasons of 500 or better, and this would also make it 19 straight seasons for the Steelers franchise. That's rarefied. Very few teams do that. You think about all the professional sports, not too many teams have done that. So Steelers are playing for something. Browns have played better football, and those two teams don't like each other. And listen, the Browns, you could make the point, they could be inspired, and they would certainly like to, at the very least, knock the Steelers out for sure, and maybe knock Tomlin into a losing season, who, by the way, if you listen to the Sunday night game, the last time Mike Tomlin had a losing season was back in Pop Warner football, 1980. That was kind of the funny line there. But Steelers are 2.5-point favorites here. 40.5 is the over-under, and give me your thoughts here on this matchup.
It's amazing what turnaround that Mike Tomlin has had with the Pittsburgh Steelers here. 2-6 after the first 8 games, 6-2 over the last 8 games, and they're just playing a much better brand of football. And it's evident that when T.J. Watt's in the lineup, that their defense is a whole different animal. And over the last month or so, you're seeing how good of a running back Najee Harris is. You're starting to see the growth of Kenny Pickett with some of these big drives late in ball games. Obviously noted against Baltimore and Las Vegas. And you're kind of seeing a team that's coming together and gelling. That's just been gelling at the right time, right? It's not always about being consistent, but it's also about being hot at the right time. And this is the perfect time to be hot. And look, I don't know if it ends in a playoff appearance. We know the help that they need to get in. With the Dolphins losing and with the Patriots losing, I can't guarantee both things happening. But what I can tell you is that they're going to beat the Cleveland Browns, right? I know the Browns have played some better football, and Watson's starting to get a little more comfortable.
Yeah, they haven't played bad in the second half. They're 7-9, not too bad.
But the Pittsburgh defense has made such improvement since the return of T.J. Watt. They're 7-2 with him in the lineup. It just goes to show how much of a difference he means to this team. And Mike Tomlin's going to get that winning record. He's going to go 9-8.
I think that's impressive, and this might be one of his best coaching jobs. And I believe Pickett right now is 7-4 as the starter, if I'm not mistaken. He's 7-4, and that counts the game he was knocked out against. I think it was the Ravens in
the first Ravens matchup. He did not. He started, but he did not finish.
And before I get to Chris, John says, "Can you please go back to the beginning of the season when I told you on this show Pickett was the real deal? I've been vindicated." Well, I'll tell you what, Justin was talking about him last year as well during the NFL draft.
He was my favorite guy coming out of the draft, and I said when Pittsburgh drafted him, they had their guy, and he has really made that. He's really started to make those strides, and I'm really impressed with what I've seen out of Kenny Pickett. And go figure, the Pittsburgh Steelers have found another quarterback.
Listen, and while the Jets, we'll get to it at the end, we can never find quarterbacks. I was speaking with one of our listeners this yesterday morning, and I was going over the list of quarterbacks, and he gave the same conclusion Chris did. Well, Ken O'Brien was okay, and he kind of gets scapegoated because of the draft he was in with Elway and Marino, but he was okay. But you really can't go into Jet history in terms of what the Pittsburgh Steelers have had, whether it's Roethlisberger and possibly now Pickett. You can go through some other Terry Bradshaw and Neil O'Donnell, who obviously moved for the Jets, and that was a disaster, but he was good there for a while as well, But here nor there. But Chris, Steelers certainly have turned it around quite a bit here in the second half. Browns, though, have also played good football. These two teams certainly have a history. They don't like each other, and it's kind of actually where I thought it would be, considering spread and over-unders. But 2.5, the Steelers are favored. 40.5, Steelers still have a lot on the line, and Browns do want to certainly dash some of those dreams, but give me your thoughts here on the Steelers and the Browns, and a lot on the line here, certainly for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You know what? The last 2 seasons, they've swapped getting swept. 2 years ago, Cleveland swept Pittsburgh, and last year, Pittsburgh swept Cleveland in the series. And this year, obviously, Cleveland won the first game, but I think that's going to change. I Pittsburgh wins. I'm with you guys too. Pittsburgh's just playing much better. They got a chance at the playoffs. Can they get in? We'll see. Obviously, 2 teams have to lose and they could very well lose because they're not playing great. So I could see Pittsburgh winning, and Cleveland's probably going to be the team to look out for next year. I think with Watson having a full year under his belt and all that, and a normal offseason if he stays out of trouble, obviously. But this year, I think Pittsburgh will beat them here.
All right, here, and let me go to a bunch of comments from John Gonzalez. He says, time for the Brute to eat the humble pie about that steel curtain. My video was classic. Thank you, John. I enjoyed it as well. Didn't realize we get that much. I think I had like 500 people view it on Instagram, so I appreciate
I think you got to do more of them to kind of promote.
So I will say, I think you do too, Tom. I think you do too.
No, I tell you what, I think I did one, but it was like at the end of the show. I will do it. I will try to do it sometimes. Like today I had a long segment, and I didn't really have the energy to do it, but certainly I'll try to do more of those for the Friday shows because obviously the Friday shows I certainly get. But all the shows we do on Sportswire are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, on Facebook, I think I had one on Wednesday that between Sportswire and my personal page had like 600 or 700 views on it. So people, they're starting to, awesome. People, they definitely follow. And I get messages from people all the time. I saw you on the sports show, and they ask about you guys. So, people definitely they like these things. So we'll definitely try it for next week. And before, obviously, who I'm going to pick, John Gonzalez likes the Steelers. He said the Brute didn't listen. I agree with Chris. Look out for Lee. I think that division is going to be a very tough division. Unlike, let's say, the South and the AFC and the NFC, that's going to be a very, very tough division here. But obviously, I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it's not just because I'm a homer. I remember the Brute Force when I would pick the Steelers week after week. You'd say, come on, Tom. You'd pick the Steelers, and you're picking them, and why are you picking them? Why are you picking them week after week? But you know what? I noticed as I've come back in the picks a little bit, as I've gotten to watch a lot more football than I did the first half. I don't want to say I was like Anthony Finkel on a napkin, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, but I've gotten to watch these teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers, to me, and they're one of the reasons why I've picked them so much and why they've played well for a few reasons. TJ Watt, you mentioned, 7-2. Kenny Pickett, but he's got weapons around him. And one of those weapons that I think has kind of gone under the radar is Jalen Warren. You look at the last two games the Steelers had won. He had made big run after big run, 13, 14, 15 yards. And it was a Steelers team if you looked at it. I want to go on a long Steelers eulogy because I want to pick these other games. But it was a Steelers team that had trouble running the ball for most of the season. But what did you see them do these last 2 weeks? They ran the ball better. Time of possession. We knew the defense was good. Tomlin's always got good defensive teams. But you saw Najee Harris, who's right up there, almost going to, at 1,000 yards, he'll probably get it here. And I think Jalen Warren, also tight end. Furmoth has, 70-plus catches right around it. And Deontay Johnson's right up there, also right around 1,000 yards. So you're starting to see why the Steelers win. It's Steeler
and the
football.
rapport with Kenny Pickett has with George Pickens, too.
Absolutely. That was my next one. So you look at the Steelers team, they're winning for legitimate reasons. So it's not like we're picking them just because, hey, we're being homers. No, it's a Steelers team week after week. Even games they won in Atlanta or the Colts on Monday night. I mean, these different games. They played Cincinnati very well. So it's a Steelers team that's found ways to win. Panthers they beat, I believe, in Carolina on the road, an improved Carolina team. So second half, they've been a much better team. Pickett's also learned to play better with the football, and I think that was a kind of a thing that hurt this Steelers team with Trubisky. So you're starting to see a Steelers team. I think they win here. I think they win here by maybe a touchdown, maybe even 9 or 10 points. Will they make the playoffs? I don't know. I hope they make it. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to see where they go, but you know what? Listen. There is a realistic path for them to make the postseason. So I'm hoping for it, and hopefully the football gods work out for us here. So we've got that out there. We'll get to our beloved Lions toward the end. But the Brute Force, let's go to a game here that doesn't mean so much, and that is the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers here, the Brute Force. And the 49ers, they are playing for the 2 seed, and this is one of those games that I would really avoid here if I was playing by the spread. And I'm so curious what the Sportatorium boys had said about this. And I'm going to go back and listen to that on my way out later this evening. But 49ers really gave the Raiders all the chances they could to win, but they did get a win. And the Cardinals, I think after what you heard Cliff Kingsbury say, he'll talk about his situation after Saturday. Kind of tells you where this one is going. But 49ers are 2 touchdown favorites here. 40.5 is the over-under. What I would say, though, the Brute Force, if I was picking it based on that, I would definitely stay away from that spread like the plague. But we don't pick on that. And give me your thoughts here if the 49ers lock up the 2 seed, or maybe the Cardinals know something that I don't.
Well, I know the Cardinals know something. They don't like to help. They don't like to help the brute force because I picked them the last 2 weeks and they screwed me both weeks. And one of them they lost in overtime, and one of them they lost by 1 point. All right, so they have screwed me of potential hope. All right, so why would I pick them now? Ultimately, I'm not going to. Okay, I'm going to take the 49ers, obviously, in this game. With your point about the spread, Tom, I agree. I'd probably stay away with it, stay away from it. But I have no confidence in the Arizona Cardinals to play even close in this game. So if I had to take the spread, I actually think I would take the 49ers. I think they will win by 2 touchdowns, okay? Because the Cardinals have proven to me over the last couple of weeks when I tried to pick them, tried to give them some confidence, okay, with my pick, all right, my affection by picking them, all right, and they ultimately let me down. Okay, so I'm going to take the 49ers. Cardinals stink. And ultimately, Kyler Murray, that injury might take a while, and they might be in.
They said he may not be ready for the start of next season. I mean, we're talking like Tommy John injury territory for a baseball fan. It's a big issue there. And Justin, certainly the Arizona Cardinals very well could be playing for a new coach after Saturday, based after what I had read briefly on Cliff Kingsbury. And certainly a big season here that definitely was one of the NFL bust of the year, I think, with the Cardinals. But maybe the warning signs were there and how they finished the season last year. And 49ers are back in a spot. I think John Gonzalez said it best. They're the hottest team in the NFL. I don't think anybody would want a piece of them. And Deebo Samuel, I think, very well could be coming back as well this week. So maybe the Brute makes that point on why he would pick them anyway over the spread. But what's your thoughts here on if the 49ers can lock up the 2 seed here?
Listen, outside shot at the 1 seed. I believe I think only if Philadelphia loses and San Francisco wins, San Francisco would become the 1 seed. Look, and that could mean a whole heck of a lot in the NFC. An extra week for Jimmy Garoppolo to get healthy, unless they stick with Brock Purdy in the postseason, which they could do. I don't know which way they're leaning at quarterback, but you know what? They got themselves a nice matchup here, Week 18. The Arizona Cardinals are just dead. I've been telling you for 2 years they're not good.
Since they were 8-1 last year, what's their record now? I believe it's 6-17. It's like that's
something like
wow.
that. Yeah. It's been very bad. Obviously, the injury to Kyler Murray is just an absolute killer. You mentioned not going to be back for the start of the year. I would absolutely be stunned if he came back at the start of next season. So, the Niners are just going to get back to business. I think they're not. I think despite the win last week, they're not happy with how they played. So
they should not be. They should not be happy with it.
They did not play good football. That defense got absolutely shelled by the Raider offense. They're going to come back with the vengeance this week, and I think they're going to win big at home. So much so that you would probably see guys like McCaffrey. I think Deebo Samuel will play most of the game just because he wants to get those reps back in. He's missed a couple of weeks here. But I could see a game where McCaffrey gets pulled early, Kittle gets pulled early. Obviously, you want to keep Purdy out there because he needs the NFL reps, but the Niners are going to win very comfortably.
Well, we'll certainly find out here. And Chris and 49ers have a lot to play for. Yes, there is a chance to overtake your Eagles for the number 1 seed. We'll get to that toward the end of the show as we do the locals last. But 49ers certainly, I think, would have a lot to play for. I want to certainly rectify their performance last week against the Raiders, although I did enjoy the game. But the Cardinals, I think there's going to be a lot of questions about that franchise once again here after the game coming up here. And give me your thoughts as the 49ers are 2 touchdown favorites here over the Arizona Cardinals, and 40.5 is the over-under.
Yeah, I think with the Justin said it. I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be ready for the opening of the season, so they might even go with a different coach next year. Because Cliff Kingsbury, he's done nothing since he's been here. And they've always touted him. He did nothing in college, and now he comes here, and he's done nothing here. So I don't get it. So he'll probably be going back to college soon. I don't know. But, San Fran's going to win this one easily. I was just checking. Josh Johnson is their 4th string quarterback, San Fran. So
yes,
maybe he comes in and
maybe
maybe second half, towards the end, he'll play. But like you said, Purdy's got to get some more games in. I don't know if Jimmy G will be back, but it's amazing. Like they're the third string and they have not missed a beat. They just keep rolling. It's just. I know he's not going to win Coach of the Year, but he should get a lot of votes for Coach of the Year for what he's done. I know they're loaded on offense, but you know what? I mean, they just don't miss a beat, and they're down to the third string quarterback, who's the last pick of the draft. It's not like he's a second or third round pick, but I think San Fran's going to win easy in this game because the Cardinals look dead anyway.
Well, before I get to John Gonzalez's comments, when I hear Josh Johnson as a quarterback on the roster with the 49ers, it almost makes me think, and Chris will appreciate this, he's almost become, I guess, the Mike Morgan of the NFL, because we're talking about, what's it now, 15 teams or 14 teams that he's been on, last I checked, or something like that. That's amazing. What an amazing set. In some ways, you kind of have to admire a guy like that because he's been in the league for so long, and he's able at that position to kind of go out there and learn and go out there and take the reps. And in a way, you got to really respect somebody like that. So let me get to John Gonzalez's comments before I make my pick. When the Steelers have been good in the past, they've had a running game. Franco Harris, God rest his soul, Jerome Bettis, of course, Bellis, and Le'Veon Bell. Though for us, again, another Steeler goes to the Jets and doesn't really work out there. So it's a typical luck for us, right? He likes the 49ers. He said Cardinals know something. They know how to lose. Yeah, I mean, 49ers, he thinks will be the 2 seed. Who's the backup for Purdy? That's my question. I think
Josh Johnson, yep.
And he said, Chris, you just answered my question. And a side point here, I am kind of happy the 49ers are kind of back in their position, because as a kid, one of my favorite Christmas gifts one year, the Brewfuss, you'll appreciate this, I got a San Francisco 49ers NFL football. It was kind of always one of my favorite gifts. I probably have that somewhere in my garage, I would have to imagine, but I always kind of in a small way, even though I'm not a 49ers fan, always like to see them do well. But I think the 49ers win here. I still don't know about if they cover the 14, because if they win and they're up big, they might just sit guys out. Maybe the Cardinals come back and make it a 13 or a 10-point game. That's just kind of my thought. I mean, the Chiefs have been favored, it feels like, by 13 or more in 5 of the last 6 weeks, and they've covered maybe one of them at most. I mean, that's the only reason I kind of think that the Cardinals, if we were going on spreads, would cover that. So that's just my thoughts on that. But yeah, 49ers. I mean, and I've noticed, I think most of these games so far, I think we've all been on the same page here. So I guess it's all about Anthony Finkel and John Gonzalez then. But the Brewfuss, let's go to a matchup, I guess, that has some small implications. And that is, of course, your beloved Dallas Cowboys and one of our friends' employer, that is the Washington Commanders. And I think the Commanders are going to be an interesting team for a number of different reasons. You saw Ron Rivera's press conference about where the playoff scenarios were, and I don't know what that means. And obviously, you're going to look at his record now as the Commanders have kind of taken a Texas two-step out of the postseason now, as they kind of played lethargic football since the Giants game a few weeks back on Sunday night. And Dallas is. Maybe that's the team Justin was referring to about a wild card loss. I don't know if I want to spoil it. I don't want to be like in wrestling, you spoil somebody's storyline there. But, Cowboys are, certainly going to be in the postseason, and I would imagine that they are going to be playing in Tampa. And that's going to be a matchup that a lot of people are going to be very curious about. I think it's going to be a great game. But for Cowboys fans like our very good friend Ray De Niro, I'm sure he's going to be sweating it out. But give me your thoughts here on this matchup between the Washington Commanders, who are 7-8-1, now eliminated, and the Dallas Cowboys, who are 12-4. And if luck helps them in their favor, they could still win the NFC East, and maybe they would dodge a bullet, and maybe some things would go in their favor. And I don't know, though, the Brewfuss. I kind of am taking your position when it comes to the Cowboys. I just don't know anymore. And what do you think in this matchup?
Yeah, well, in this matchup, first of all, let me just designate the Washington Commanders. I was about to call it the football team because, honestly, they might need to go back to it.
At least you didn't call them the Redskins. You didn't call them the Redskins.
Well, you know what, Tom Bryce? I have alluded to, the Atlanta Falcons as the dumbest team. All right, and I think that the Washington Commanders should arguably take that reign from the Falcons for the dumbest decision ever. All right, and I think that I said it last week, and some people were like, Brad, it's not that crazy. It's not that big a difference. Well, guess what? It was, because I predicted it perfect last week. I said Carson Wentz is going to throw at least three interceptions. And what did he do?
He was brutal last week. Oh, my God. He was brutal.
He did exactly what I said he'd do. All right. So ultimately, that was a disaster. That was a horrible, 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 pathetic decision by the Commanders. And they lose to the Browns in an ugly game, in a must-win game. I mean, you can't do that. And again, you've seen Commander Carson fail before. You've seen him fail at the end of seasons, when the season's on the line. You know, recently he failed against the Jaguars with the Colts in a big game. All right, and then he fails here. He hadn't been in a situation. And I know everybody's like, oh, well, Taylor Heineke wasn't playing that great. Taylor Heineke also just went against the 49ers the week before. All right, a really good defense. All right, he was going against some quality teams and still putting up decent numbers. Okay.
Yeah, Giants, he was okay. Yeah, he wasn't horrible. I mean, he wasn't like a world beater. But
you know, again, and I'm not saying that he's a world beater or anything great, but he's damn sure better than Commander Carson. Okay, Commander Carson, who stinks. All right,
you were right about that one. You even 3 years ago, I remember you were saying that. I give you
horrible.
that. I give you that.
He's terrible. Again, I'm going to designate that as the dumbest decision. All right, because it was horrible and it cost the Commanders and my buddy Jake Supran a playoff chance. All right, so I'm sorry, Jake, for your dumb decision by your organization. Okay, you need to get your act together as an organization. All right, with not only that, but a lot of other matters.
Oh, they're gonna have a lot of questions, and part of me, I'm not even sure about the coach. He's got a losing record. I know they won the division a few years back, but I don't know there. I mean, I think he'll hang on, but I mean, I'm sure we'll speak about next week when we have Black Monday. But you know, Johnson, it's an interesting matchup, and John Gonzalez says that he wants to clarify Dallas is locked in at the 5 spot. So, I mean, if that's the case,
they're not.
He's saying not. Okay. I thought that they actually still had a shot at the NFC East, but
they do.
Okay.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
And the number one, I think, too.
Okay. And I thought that
I don't know. I don't know if they'd get the number one over San Francisco, though.
Well, they beat Minnesota, so they would have the edge over Minnesota, right?
Yeah, San Fran loses. Not that they will,
yeah,
but
right. Okay, yeah. They're not totally out. They're not totally out for the 1 seed. They could be 1, 2, or 5, I believe.
All right,
Most
so
likely
I mean
5, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, so listen, Dallas has, I guess, a chance depending on things. I think they have less of a chance to really go up to a 2 or 1 than the Steelers have in making the play, because I believe the Steelers do have somewhat of a plausible path. But you know, Cowboys did get a couple of wins in a row under their belts. They did certainly beat Tennessee for what that's worth. They did beat the Eagles, a game that I certainly give them credit for. But Commanders are going to have some questions once again here in the offseason. What happens at quarterback? What happens with coach if you want to go down that road? And Dallas here, I kind of feel like still, Justin, they're the team you were referring to. If it's a team that gets bounced out yet again early in the postseason, considering that franchise's lack of success since the last time they won the Super Bowl. And I can't believe I'm saying this yet again on Sportzwire Radio. The Dallas Cowboys, the last time they won the Super Bowl or even to an NFC championship game was 1995, and they have less than a handful of playoff victories since then. But what do you think here? Cowboys are touchdown favorites in Washington, and give me your thoughts.
Well, bingo. You're right on. It's Mike McCarthy. If
they
lose to the Tampa Bay Bucks, Mike McCarthy is as good as gone. There's two things consistent with the month of January. Weather that sucks in the Northeast and the Dallas Cowboys.
Hasn't been bad so far, though, the last 7 days. Let's please keep our fingers crossed. Please. So far, so good.
It's coming.
All right.
Maybe I'm trying to reverse trick so we get a good January. But
all right, fair enough.
Anyways, listen, this game doesn't count because they're going to defeat the Washington Commanders here. And look, this is a good test for Sam Howell at quarterback for the Commanders. They're trying out the rookie 4th rounder from North Carolina. Was a decent college quarterback. Ron Rivera's just throwing darts at the wall at this point. I mean, why not? You know, he foolishly decided to start Carson Wentz over Taylor Heineke last week. We saw how that came back to bite them in the you-know-what. And, you know, I wouldn't say – I don't think he's on the hot seat, but I could definitely say the seat's starting to get warm. I think the Cowboys are going to win rather comfortably. I also think that McCarthy's going to scoreboard watch as well. And if he sees the Niners got the game in hand and the Eagles have the game in hand, he's going to probably start to pull back. And that's when things could get a little bit dicey. But I'll take the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Again, McCarthy, certainly has the resume, but the postseason success, we'll find out. But, Chris, Cowboys here are touchdown favorites. Certainly, I guess they have a little bit of momentum for what it's worth. I mean, they played okay against the Titans and certainly got a win against the Eagles. And Commanders, I think, are definitely in a lot of trouble right now. And it's funny, on Thanksgiving, I thought, wow, you know what? The Commanders are a team that they could be real dangerous if they get into the postseason. But quarterback play does make a big difference in why certain teams, and our Jets are one of those examples of why they're on the outside looking in. And give me your thoughts here in this matchup in an NFC rivalry game between the Dallas Cowboys, who are postseason bound, and the Washington Commanders, who are not.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Dallas should definitely win this game, especially with the rookie Sam Howell quarterbacking. When I heard that, I'm like, Jesus, Washington has no shot. They're throwing this kid right in there. Dallas has beaten them 3 straight. They're going to make it 4 straight. This is a great rivalry, but this is going to be should be an easy victory for Dallas. A little tune-up before the playoffs. They do have that outside shot at the division and at the number 1 seed, but hopefully they don't get that. Hopefully Philly takes care of business. But, yeah, I think it'll be an easy victory for Dallas.
Well, we'll certainly find out. It used to be, if you think about it, that was at one time really one of the best rivalries in all of sports. But they really, I guess, congruently haven't been good at the same time too much. When the Cowboys were great in the 90s, Washington was basically about to fall off from their runs. I guess 2012 comes to mind, when the last game of the season for the NFC East, and there really hasn't been too many other instances, but those are some things that come to mind. Before I pick, let me get to some comments. Tom, I ain't losing to no napkin. The napkin magic wore off. Gimmicks don't work against me. Well, you're up 3, so I feel a little bit better.
I think you should calm down and worry about his picks and not talk.
But you know what though? Anthony Finkel, and I love the guy to death. He's been a buddy of mine for over 7 years, but this dude's not picking until tomorrow. And I don't think that's fair. I think it should be John Gonzalez, to tell you the truth. He should be the winner then, because he could be getting an unfair advantage. He's going to pick certain games, and that's kind of not fair. That we wouldn't listen. If two teams,
although to another point, real quick, if Anthony Finkel's not paying attention, then he doesn't know who John's picking. So he should really know who John's picking, so that maybe he can.
He's the kind of now. Part of me says he's the kind of guy that wouldn't pay attention, but part of me knows he's the kind of guy that would watch something like this. I have a feeling about it. So, but that's my 2 cents. But
let me ask you guys a quick question. Restart the picks when the playoffs start, or are we just going to continue?
I'm
with
open.
The record?
I'm open. I mean,
I think we should go back to 0 and.
It's up to the brute force. I mean, listen. We're going to pick these games. I mean, I'm happy.
I'd like to hear what John Gonzalez has to say about that.
Well, that's going to depend on where he ends up in the standings. That's going to probably be my answer with that. Don't worry, Brute. The picks didn't work out for you, but Dolan time will be back soon. Yeah, probably next week.
Why did you have to remind me of that?
What? Right. He was in a good mood. Now he's gonna be in a bad mood.
You gotta be kidding me.
He goes Birds 1, Niners 2, Vikes 3, Bucks 4, Dallas 5, Giants 6, Seattle 7. Well, we're gonna get to them in 2 picks for now, but I would say this: if Washington wasn't starting a third-string quarterback, I would kind of, for whatever reason, like Washington in this matchup, but I just can't see a third-string quarterback winning here in Dallas. Against Dallas, I should say in Dallas, against Dallas, even though I could see, maybe Washington's a little bit motivated. Certainly guys, I'm sure, aren't too thrilled about being eliminated from the postseason and the way they play. But, I do think Dallas wins here. They have something to play for. There are scenarios at play, and I think ultimately that's what's going to carry them here and get a win here. And 13 wins. It would be an impressive 13-4 no matter which way you look at it. So I think Dallas does win here. I think the safe route is to go for Dallas. Now, maybe if I was like 1 or 2 games back, this would be one of those games I would think about it, but I'm not. So, ultimately, I got to go realistic here. But the brute force, let's go to a game that has absolutely, really 0 at hand here. Well, maybe it does technically a little bit for the Chargers, but Chargers and Broncos I'm talking about here. And what I see bizarre here, and maybe I'm missing something here, is that the Broncos are 2.5-point favorites here, and it's 40 is the over-under. Maybe I'm missing something here, and I don't know what I'm missing, but Broncos here are small favorites. They are certainly going to be playing for a whole new look, and I am so curious what that franchise does when it comes to a whole number of different things. They will have some big decisions. We'll find out what those things may be. But Chargers certainly had a good second half. They didn't fold. They didn't collapse, and Herbert played well, and defense played well, and they basically played like a playoff team here for a change, unlike last year. But do Chargers go into the postseason with momentum? We did talk about maybe a little bit of excitement for a potential Chargers-Jaguars playoff preview here if things work out. But give me your thoughts here when it comes to the Denver Broncos, who I see bizarrely as 2.5-point favorites here in this matchup, and 40 is the over-under.
Well, I'll thank them because I guess they just wanted me to put this up there for today.
I was about to say, finally, the upset alert has come back.
Listen, I guess the betting the betting people wanted me to put the upset alert up. So, listen, I'm taking the Chargers. I mean, I ain't taking no damn Broncos. Listen, I know the Broncos defense, is still something to be talked about, but their offense is also something to be talked about in a negative fashion. And I don't care who's quarterbacking. Okay, I do think that the Chargers, as you said, Tom, are building positive momentum going into the playoffs. They're going to be a tough out for whoever plays them. But ultimately, I think they get a nice win in Denver. This is a nice tune-up, too, against a good defense. So
absolutely.
To go against a good defense and to have a good performance going into the playoffs, I think that's good for the Chargers, and I think they know that as well as I do. So in the end, this is obvious for me. I think I'm picking the Chargers, and obviously we're going to take them with the spread.
I think absolutely. I mean, Justin, I'm so perplexed here. Why are the Denver Broncos favored, considering the way the Denver Broncos have played? I mean, I guess the home field, but the Chargers do kind of have something to play for. I would imagine they would want to play and be the 5 seed, depending on how things work. I guess maybe it's because, they'll know by kickoff, I guess, whether if Baltimore won or lost. Maybe that's one theory, I guess, if you were going to go down the Vegas path. But give me your thoughts here as the Broncos are 2.5-point favorites and 40 is the over-under.
I think you could see a lot of Chase Daniel in this ball game just to not get Justin Herbert hurt. Remember, he's already dealt with rib injuries this season. You really don't want him hurt going into the postseason. I don't think it really matters to the Chargers whether they're 5 or 6. I don't know that to them it's a big difference. Because I know that going to Cincinnati would be a tough matchup, but also, going to Jacksonville is going to be a tough matchup. So sure. I really don't know there's much of a difference between 5 and the 6 seed right now. I think that's why the Broncos are favored, is because you're going to see a lot. You might see a lot of Chase Daniel. You might not see much of Austin Eckler in this game, and Keenan Allen, guys who've been banged up all year long. I'm still going to slightly take the Chargers. I just don't trust the Broncos, and they've really not given you anything to believe in them. So I'm going to take the Chargers in a close battle.
All right, that's fair. And Chris, Chargers and Broncos. And I mean, I'm really trying to figure this out here, how Vegas has the Broncos 2.5-point favorites. I guess it's about the scenario here. Maybe they think that Baltimore wins in Cincinnati, but even then, Cincinnati's 7-point favorites. And I would have to think if you're the Chargers, you would like to move up. And if you can get that opportunity, maybe you want to play in Jacksonville. I don't know. But the Broncos are 2.5-point favorites here. 40 is the over-under. And give me your thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it should be an easy victory for the Chargers because of how bad the Broncos have been all year. So, I mean, I don't know how you can not pick them to win the Chargers, even with their backups in. So, I mean, I got to go with the Chargers. The Broncos have done nothing all year. I'm going to take the Chargers.
I mean, what's their most recent win? The Cardinals? I mean, that tells you right there. That's really embarrassing. I mean, they lost game. The Raiders game, they were comfortably winning. They found a way to lose that game. And look at the way they played against the Rams, and we're going to get to them next. And I mean, it's a team that's just, and their defense was good most of the year until they kind of collapsed here. So John Gonzalez also wants to say, however you want it, I will win the playoffs and the Super Bowl too. Okay, all right, we'll certainly see.
He's really feeling himself. Really feeling himself.
Well, I mean, let's see if he keeps the 3-game lead right now over the napkin here. And he says, come on now, Chargers, move on. Broncos will be bad next year, too. They still have, it's a good question. And he says, no, the Chargers don't want to go. That's why I'm surprised here, John, that I would have to think that Vegas would want to pick the Chargers here. Maybe it's historically Chargers haven't played well in Denver, but this is a poor Denver team. This is a Denver team. It's bizarre to me because they have the Cowboys favorites over the Commanders on the road. So to me, it's just kind of a little bit of a peculiar. I don't know how they go about these things, but I am going to go with the Chargers here because I like the way the Chargers have played, and I think the Chargers are playing good football, and I still think at the end of the day, Herbert is going to play, and I'm with John. That's exactly my sentiment. I think you want to move up. I think you want that opportunity to play the Jacksonville Jaguars because you might have a chance to win that game. I think that's a 50-50 game, to tell you the truth, between Herbert and Lawrence. Two young quarterbacks and two kind of similar teams right now in how they've played. So that's my thought here. But the Brute Force, speaking of games that do have some implications, and that is, of course, for our beloved Detroit Lions, and that is the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks, of course, knocked out our Jets, and we all were kind of cautiously optimistic about the Jets. And I'm so curious, though, about what the Rams do in the offseason. What happens with Sean McVay? Does he want to go to the announce booth? Does he want to go and spend time with his hot wife in the offseason? Or does this Rams team come back and maybe retool? Matthew Stafford, what happens there? Now, he's finally won the big one, and that core, they were good for a while, but I don't know what happens there. They're 5-11, certainly looking to the draft, and the Seahawks still have a lot to play for. They partially control their own destiny. We're going to get to the next two games, and that'll be implicating one of them at the 8:20 game. But, the Brute Force Seahawks here, I guess, played okay enough against the Jets, and they certainly want to win. And the Rams are playing for the golf course, and they'll have some questions as well in the offseason, as most teams will in the NFL. So what do you think here between the Seattle Seahawks, who for now are the last team in the NFC playoff picture, against the Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams, who could very well be heading for, by a winning percentage standpoint, the worst season ever by a Super Bowl winner?
Yeah, well, you know what, Tom? You said the Rams are headed for the golf courses. But
they are.
You know what, Tom? They could do our team a nice favor before they get.
I'll tell you what. That's a good scenario.
Because listen, we all know the scenario, okay, for our beloved Detroit Lions, okay, and in order for the Giants to have any chance to get in the playoffs, they need the Rams to win. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to give you no insight, no analysis on this, and just simply say that I am praying, begging, hoping, all right, that, all right, the Los Angeles Rams win this game, all right? Of course, our New York Jets couldn't help the Lions by losing last week to this team, but ultimately, listen, again, Baker Mayfield, maybe wants to have one more great game to show, people that he's deserving of a contract. Geno Smith, as you said, he played all right, but he didn't play amazing. So I think the Seahawks have a similar game, all right, but not amazing. And something tells me that maybe some last Baker Mayfield magic will happen, and somehow, some way, the Rams will win like 23-20. All right, and I'm hoping for it because I want my Lions to have a chance at the playoffs.
All right, I tell you what. That's certainly a very, very fair point here. And Justin, Rams and Seahawks, and Rams obviously are going to have some decisions. What happens with quarterback? What happens with coach? What do they do in the draft? Do they kind of figure and come back and retool here? And then the Seahawks, who, again, they win, and they very well could return to the postseason. And I think Pete Carroll kind of had an under-the-radar coaching job, and it would be good on them if they're able to kind of come back a little bit from their second half kind of roadblock that they hit. Geno Smith has had a very, very unexpected good season for them. But what's your thoughts there in Seattle with that crowd and that atmosphere there? 41.5 is the over-under. Seahawks are 6-point favorites. Give me your thoughts.
Well, I hate to burst anybody's bubble, but by 7:30 p.m., the Detroit Lions will be eliminated from postseason contention. That's because the Seattle Seahawks are going to win this game, and they're going to win this game handedly. Listen, the Rams are just having a bad year. Obviously, with the injury to Matthew Stafford, they were doomed from the quarterback position. But remember, you'll get guys like Cooper Kupp back. You'll have Stafford back next year with that big contract. You still have Cam Akers. I would think Sean McVay returns next year. I don't think he wants to go out like this. So I think the Rams will be better next year. But, if they're still missing Aaron Donald, he's not going to play on Sunday. I could see Kenneth Walker running for north of like 160, trudging towards about 200 yards rushing. I think the Seahawks are going to win this game pretty comfortably. Now, will they get in? You'll have to find out later if I think so.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I cannot wait for the Lions and Packers game. That's another game those are the two games I was really anxious to pick here. But Chris, the Rams have certainly had a disappointing season, underwhelming season. Maybe you blame it on quarterback. Maybe you blame it on Aaron Donald, injuries, different things. Certainly wasn't the season I think most people expected from them. And the Seahawks, conversely, have had a season that I think most people didn't expect for them for the right reasons. And certainly without Russell Wilson, and Geno Smith has played a hell of a lot better than Russell Wilson. And give him credit, they got to win against our Jets, and they could kind of bounce back here and maybe get themselves into the postseason. So, what do you think here as the Seahawks are 6-point favorites, 41.5 in a 425 game?
Yeah, you know what? The Rams are just too banged up to compete, I think, with Seattle. Not that Seattle's that good, but I don't see the Rams beating Seattle. So I'll take Seattle in this game. And Seattle needs some help in that Sunday night game. Seattle needs Green Bay to lose to get into the playoffs. So we'll see. And Green Bay, we'll get into them. Green Bay's the hot team also. That's another team you don't want to play in the playoffs right now. But Seattle, I think, should win this one easily.
Well, I think for certain teams, before I get to John Gonzalez, it almost reminds me of the Joe Cocker song, A Little Help from My Friends, which used to be, as a little kid, the Wonder Years theme song for those way back in the day. Yep, I remember. I used to hate that because that meant, as a little kid, I had to go to bed soon. I was a little kid. They would play the Wonder Years on. That meant that I had to go to bed. So I was not a Wonder Years fan for different reasons, but I hope that our Detroit Lions season doesn't go to bed either. John Gonzalez says Russell Wilson has become Carson Wentz. You know what? I think his teammates probably think less of him than the Commanders do with Carson Wentz. He likes Seattle. He said, listen, I picked the Jets last week against Seattle, but they will get in. You know what, the Brute Force? I got to agree with you, the Brute Force, because you know what? You're absolutely right, because you know what? How could we, as beloved Detroit Lions supporters, how the hell could we pick the Seattle Seahawks this week? If we are praying like there's no tomorrow, right? We all prayed, thankfully, right, for DeMar Hamlin, and DeMar recovered, and DeMar's on his way back, right? You know what? Maybe we do believe in miracles. Just like what Al Michaels famously on the 1980 call for the Winter Olympics, and the USA won, and they wound up winning the gold. Why not us, the Brute Force? And you know what? Sean McVay, he does have something to play for, because I think Sean McVay is a good football man. Baker Mayfield, like I said last week, for the same reasons, I think he's still got something to play for. I think the Rams aren't going to want to go out like idiots, like the Cardinals are going to go out, like some other teams are going to go out. And I do think that we have to pick the Los Angeles Rams to beat the Seattle Seahawks. Because you know what? Not for nothing. Why do we want to see Geno Smith have a chance in the postseason? Why would we want to see, right, as locals, right? When we saw Geno Smith, this guy could barely do anything for us as a Jets quarterback. He goes into the postseason, and God forbid something happens here. And Pete Carroll, and all we're going to hear about Geno Smith getting a big contract, and he's this and he's that, and we don't need that. So you know what, the Brute Force? You're absolutely right. You are a brother of mine, and we got to stick together on this one, and I am 100% behind you. I give you a little bit more of a reason why you did with the Rams, and I am going with the Los Angeles Rams over the Seahawks. Although I should put in my notes, I put, if you can't see it, LOL. I put LOL, laugh out loud. That was my note. So that's kind of how I feel on that. And John says, well, you can pray all you want. Seattle is getting in. You know what? We'll talk about that next. Let's go very quickly here. You know, I am going to go with the locals because I want to go Detroit, Green Bay, main event. You convinced me, the Brute Force. Giants and Eagles here. Eagles, 2 touchdown favorites. Giants are locked in for the 6th spot. Eagles have to win this game. If the Eagles don't win this game, then they don't deserve to have the top seed, Chris. They really don't. 43 is the over-under. I do think this is the one team that's probably resting everybody when it comes to the postseason with the Giants. You know what? The Giants, I got to give them credit. They played a lot better the last 3 or 4 weeks. They rebounded nicely, got a couple of big wins. And you know what? If they wind up playing somebody like Minnesota, they played them very well down there. You know what? Maybe I would give them a shot. So the brute force Brad Weiss, though, Giants here are two touchdown underdogs against the Eagles. 43 is the spread. 425 is the kickoff. I mean, who do you think here wins?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Eagles. The reason why really is because they can't do it just as bad as they did last week. That was embarrassing. To lose to the Saints, and especially the way that they did. I don't care that it was Gardner Minshew. Okay, I listen, they had Andy Dalton, for God's sake. I mean, it's Andy Dalton, and you lost to Andy Dalton at home. That is embarrassing, and I think that the Eagles know it, and they know they need to come back and have a strong performance before the playoffs against the Giants. And I know, like you said, Tom, I think the Giants will be resting players for the most part. So I got to take the Eagles here. They're desperate. They want to get that 1 seed. They're coming off an absolutely horrifying, disgusting loss. I think they will bounce back, and they will win. Spread, that's a tough one. I'm not sure about 2 touchdowns. I'll say I'll take the Giants with the spread, but I'll give the Eagles the win.
Yeah, I don't like those spreads. Anything over, I think, 9.5 this season, and I'm sure Justin knows this before I get to him next. I think if you looked at most teams that were favored by more than, let's say, 9.5, I'll even say 9 to be pedestrian, I don't think those teams won those matchups. I really think if you looked at the winning percentage, that's something I'm sure we could speak about another time. But you know, Justin, Giants are locked in at 6. They're one of the few teams that really can't do anything. They're controlling their own destiny, similar to the Bucs, another example as well. And Eagles still have a lot to play for. And I think Brad's absolutely right. I mean, that was as embarrassing a performance as you can get. Andy Dalton, I mean, his numbers are just, atrocious. I mean, you lose that game. And Eagles certainly do want to lock in that 1 seed. And I think it'd be disappointing for them because if you looked at how they played for about, I'd say 80% of this season to kind of lose that, I think that would really be kind of a big setback for that team. And I mean, give me your thoughts here as the Eagles are 2 touchdown favorites at home, 425 kickoff against the Giants.
Yeah, I certainly love the Giants with the spread here. Absolutely. Even though you're probably going to see a ton of Tyrod Taylor, you're not going to see much of Saquon Barkley. You probably see more Matt Breida in the backfield. Have they announced who's starting for the Eagles? Is it going to be Minshew again?
John says, and I don't know, this is what John says. John says it looks like Hurts is playing Sunday from what I remember. I don't know. In the post, I didn't see he was confirmed, but maybe he's questionable. That's how
they were being very cryptic all week in the press conferences, and they mentioned today that he's trending towards starting.
Yeah, I thought he was still at least. I think in the official line is he's questionable, at least from what I saw. Right?
I think he's gonna. I think he needs the reps here, especially with the Eagles at the 1 seed in the division still on the line. Amazingly enough, for a team that started 13-1, I do think the Eagles are going to win this football game. But I think the Giants are going to keep this very close, even with a lot of the backups. They already said Azeez Ojulari is not going to play. The talented pass rusher. I just can't see the Giants getting blown out twice by the Eagles. The Giants, if you just notice the trend of the Giants, even when they lose close games. So they don't really get handled very much. So I'm going to go with the Eagles here.
Yeah, Giants have, for the most part, other than a few weeks, most of their games have been kind of the same way. I mean, the Colts game, conversely, is the other way, where that was an example of where they didn't play very well. But Chris, obviously, your Philadelphia Eagles, certainly you were watching this with bated breath, maybe. But Eagles here are certainly big favorites at home. You'd have to think your Eagles are going to be motivated to avoid what happened to them last week against a very, very mediocre Saints team, putting it kindly. But give me your thoughts here, and if the Eagles can finally lock in the 1 seed and get that bye here throughout the NFC playoffs.
Yeah, I think Philly's got to bounce back. Hurts is going to play. I think it's going to be a blowout. I think they're going to win by a couple of scores easily. It's going to be like their first time they played against each other. They're getting healthy now, Philadelphia, right? They got Goddard back a couple of weeks ago. They're getting Gardner Johnson back this week. So that's going to be huge for them. Yeah, and they're going for that safe. They're going for the sack record. Can they get 5 to break the record, 4 to tie it? Yeah, I think they can, I'm going to take Philly because they, like you said, if they lose, they don't deserve that number 1 seed.
No.
The way they've played. But they got to bounce back heading into the playoffs. So this is their last shot to do it. And they want that week off, right? To give Hurts that extra week to rest, especially after this week. So I'm going to take Philly. Easily.
And I feel like I know I said this on most recent Sportswire shows. I really feel like for the Eagles, they need that 1 seed, let's say, more than San Francisco, because San Francisco to me has been battle tested. They've won on the road, and I kind of feel like if you look at it, Philly and San Francisco. I mean, I really don't take Minnesota that seriously at the moment. And Dallas, I don't know, but I mean, I really do feel like the Eagles need that 1 seed more so than San Francisco because San Francisco's been battle tested the last couple of postseasons. So John says here, Seattle gets in and becomes easy prey for San Francisco at 2. John likes the Birds. Eagles locked in at 6. I mentioned the Hurts point. Birds and the points, no close at all. And I think that's why I like Philadelphia because I think the Giants, just a lot of these guys, you really think Barkley is going to get a lot of reps. You really think that Jones is going to play more than, I don't know, a quarter and a half? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, what does Dable gain? I mean, what does he gain from, God forbid something happens? So I kind of think here Philly wins this game just because of those things. But I think if it meant something, I think the Giants could be competitive here. I don't know if they'd win, but I think Philadelphia will win. I think the Giants will be an interesting team to watch in the postseason because I think if they did match up with Minnesota, I think they could win that game. I really do think they could win that game. Something tells me here because again, Giants have run the ball well this year and defenses play well. What do we know about the postseason? And Jones has been very good with the ball. He has not turned over the ball like years past. Giants have some interesting decisions there, but I obviously like the Philadelphia Eagles in this matchup. So the Brute Force Brad Weiss, that leaves us with 2 more games, but we're going local this time because Lions-Packers should be main event. Thank you for convincing me on that. And then there's our New York Jets, our very disappointing New York Jets, and the Miami Dolphins. I mean, 2 definitely disappointing teams here in the second half. Dolphins still have a chance here to make the postseason. They are very, very small favorites here, 2-point favorites. I believe it's the closest here of all the games. 38.5 is the over-under, and it's a battle of quarterbacks that you never thought would be starting here in this matchup. And Joe Flacco's getting the nod here, so God help us all, right? But the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, Jets here are underdogs here. I don't know where you go in this matchup because I really don't know what to expect from these 2 teams. Miami still has a plausible path at making the postseason despite their own struggles here, losing their last 5 games. And Jets have lost 6 of their last 7 games since they were 6-3, and they've lost 7 of their last 10. So, I mean, give me your thoughts here and where we go in this matchup between the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins, who I always feel like somewhere or another always end the season against each other.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But listen, I got a lot to say here. All right, let's start with
Go for it.
Let's start with number 1. All right, the New York Jets. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, to go from 7-4 to 7-9.
6-3. They were 6-3 and lost 6 of their last 7.
Yeah, you want to go further? I mean, what a tragic embarrassment. What a very disappointing finish to a season that looked promising. And it's just sad that you really feel that if you had one position fixed, you could be in a lot better hands. But ultimately, it is what it is for the Jets. And listen, when you talk about, I just got to laugh. You got to talk about Joe Flacco starting this week. All right, Joe Flacco. All right, we got to watch. And listen, Pittsburgh Steelers fans are praying for Joe Flacco. Please do well. Please do well. All right, yeah. All right. But listen, there's that old song, or it's not old, but it's a song that I remember in my head right now. It's called "Sweet Nothing." All right, because listen,
yeah, I know that song.
It's all sweet that the Pittsburgh Steelers have made this run, but it's all going to be for nothing, Tom Bryce, because they're not going to make the playoffs. All right, the Miami Dolphins are going to win this game. I don't care who quarterbacks. All I need to know is that Joe Flacco is the quarterback in the Jets, and that says it all for me. All right, the Miami Dolphins will win. The Pittsburgh Steelers will go home. And ultimately, if the Steelers find a way in the playoffs, I'll do something. Like I'll find something. I'll post a video of me telling, saying that they stink, all right, all year long, and then I'll finish the video with Tom's reaction or something. I'll do something epic, all right, something epic if the Steelers make the playoffs. But I'm telling you right now, they won't. And by the way, nothing would make me more sick than if the Jets won and assisted the Steelers to get in the playoffs. How sick is that the Jets would assist the Steelers, all right? Don't let it happen. No. Joe Flacco, do your job and stink like you always do, all right? Please let the Dolphins win.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, you said a mouthful, and I am praying that the football gods give me a little bit of help to do another video where we could certainly use some of those words there. So I am praying for that. And, Justin, I think John Gonzalez said it best here. I mean, Miami's going to start pretty much, I guess, a scrub from the practice squad. I mean, obviously. Skylar Thompson, I can't give you a scouting report on that. Maybe if I had like Ernest W, he'd give me a scouting report or somebody else like that. But I mean, Jets and Dolphins are certainly it is Jets and Dolphins, so I still believe that you throw out all the things that have gone on. But remarkably, the Dolphins could get into the postseason. They do have a very plausible path, despite their own struggles. And the Jets, to me, it's really more about them. I mean, because the Jets, I mean, this was a catastrophic collapse here in the second half, and as Brad pointed out, lost their last 5 games, 6 of their last 7, 7 of their last 9, and whether you blame it on coaching, you blame it on injuries, you blame it on mischief. I mean, it is what it is. And 7 wins is still good for us. We improved drastically, but I think it's going to have a sour taste in Jets fans' mouths regardless of what happens here. And give me your thoughts in this matchup.
So I'll give you a quick scouting report on Skylar Thompson. We kicked the you-know-what out of him back in week 5. Remember, Teddy Bridgewater got kicked out in the first play by Sauce Gardner.
Good point.
The Jets won that game 40-17. I'm telling you what, Jets are going out here with a W.
Oh, you the man, Justin. You the man. That's why we play baseball banter on sportnarium.com.
The Jets are going to do it again to Skylar Thompson. They will be able to force a couple of turnovers here. I don't expect much offensively, although I will say if Joe Flacco throws the ball 40 times, he'll get 35 of those balls to Garrett Wilson. You know how he's feeding Garrett Wilson in this game. And you know what? Good. Garrett Wilson go for 100 yards. Go lock up offensive rookie of the year and what's been a special rookie year for Jets rookies, especially with Sauce Gardner, with Garrett Wilson, showing that the future's bright. And you just go into the offseason figuring out what to do with the quarterback position. I'm glad I'm bummed that Mike White's not playing with the rib injury. I know he played hurt last week, unfortunately, and I'm also glad they're not going back to Zach Wilson. I don't need to see Zach Wilson ever again in a Jet uniform. Unfortunately, he's the backup. I would have had Chris Trevler as the backup, honestly.
I heard that from one of our listeners.
Send Zach Wilson away. Yeah, he needs a mental break from the game. He's broken. He's not good. I'm whatever with the Flacco situation. I don't expect anything out of him. I expect the defense to rise up in this game. So give me the Jets.
Chris Trevor was interesting. One of our listeners, again, yesterday morning had said to me, Chris Trevor, he runs the ball, he moves, he gives you something else. You give him a shot. I don't know. I really don't know what he has. But, Chris, I'm so curious what you and Sharma are going to say about this tomorrow. We played on sportnarium.com/player. But, both these teams definitely did not have the second half that they had in the first half. It is a rematch from week 5. These two teams, to me, are totally different football teams. Jets certainly improved, but I do think there's going to be some questions here regardless of whether they come away with the W. And, Dolphins last year, if you remember, had a miraculous turnaround to narrowly miss the playoffs. And right now, they could go the other way and miss the playoffs for the same reasons. But somebody has to win here. 38.5 is the over-under here, one of the lower ones here, and the spread is the lowest one of the week at 2. So give me your thoughts here on who do you think wins, and I can't wait till I give my thoughts.
Yeah, I just don't understand Flacco starting. I don't understand Zach Wilson being the second string guy because of, like Justin said, they mentioned, he's got to get away from the game. And just to step away from the game. He needs to clear his head, whatever. So why is he the second string? He shouldn't even be in there. It makes no sense because especially now they have the offensive line is really banged up. There's 3 guys out now. So now you add that and Flacco can't move. So there's a good chance Wilson's going to be in this game very quickly. Okay. So it makes no sense why he's even the back. And it doesn't make sense that Flacco's starting, and it makes no sense that Wilson is the backup. If anything, they should have started Strevler and had Flacco as the backup because this makes no sense. And another thing, how in the world does Mike White go from he can't play because he's got broken ribs to playing, and now he's got broken ribs again, and now he can't play?
So my only thing with that is they got the doctors to clear him. The Jets were still alive for the postseason. He's the best quarterback on the roster. They forced him back in there. Now that they're eliminated and they understand that he's still got the broken ribs, I think they said, all right, you're done. We're going to sit you. And you know what I think happened? Robert Saleh just changed the quarterback chart. He took QB2, made him QB1. He took QB3 and made him QB2. That's what happened. Chris Strevler is still QB4 on the depth chart.
Yeah,
so now
he shouldn't be playing. But anyway, right now it's a poop show right now for the Jets. It's sad. From what we were a couple of months ago to now, it's pretty ridiculous. But I don't care who's quarterbacking for either team. Miami should win this game. It's sad. It's a sad ending, but you know what? You may as well lose. Get into the draft. Get a little bit higher. Move up a couple of picks. Maybe our schedule will be a little bit easier next year too. So I'm picking the Dolphins to win this one. I don't know how, but they're going to win this one.
All right, here. Let me get to a bunch of different things here. John Gonzalez on the Eagles says Hurts will build up a huge lead by halftime. He likes Miami. Flacco is starting. Why? Who knows? Is it a management decision? I don't know what you want to throw out there. Jets became a huge disappointment. All facts. Yeah, they were a disappointment in the second half. There's no reason you could argue that. Miami will win even if they start some scrub from the practice squad. Randy Dillon from the Hockey Fan Track can start a quarterback for Miami. They would still win. Well, Justin, check your temperature. Hey, if you dress Zach, let him play. Why not? Listen.
Honestly, he might end up in the game if he's going to be the backup quarterback. Like
Chris,
you said.
Yeah, Chris Strevler is not an NFL QB, maybe in the XFL. I kind of agree with that because I really don't think Chris Strevler is an NFL starting quarterback. I mean, he really couldn't.
But I think also, too, the point of this being a meaningless game for the Jets, why not? You just have a gimmicky game where he maybe does throw 10 passes, but he does all these QB reads. They run the ball with Zonovan Knight. You run the ball with Strevler. He's got himself 15 carries himself.
Well,
he's not a quarterback. He's just a...
No, listen, some people like him because he had one nice drive against the Jaguars when the game was really mostly in doubt.
So bad, though.
Yeah,
wide open dude that was underthrown by 15 yards.
But guys liked him because he ran for a couple of first downs, but I don't think that's an NFL everyday quarterback. I'm with John.
Absolutely not.
And, I'm probably going to get lampooned for this, but if I'm rooting for the Pittsburgh Steelers to make the postseason, why would I pick the Miami Dolphins? I have to pick the New York Jets here to win because if I want the Steelers to make the postseason so the Brute Force can post those videos on Instagram and have everybody see them, I got to pick the Jets here. And I actually do have one defense in this case. I know people are going to say, yeah, Miami with the practice squad in Miami, they've still got something to logistically play for, and the Steelers won't have any idea about the game because they're playing the same time. At the end of the day, it's 38.5, right? So what does that mean? If the Jets give up under 20 points, and the Brute Force said this last week on the air, if the Jets give up under 20 points this season, they've won their games. So you can look at it at this standpoint. If the Jets are going to hold Miami to, let's say, 14 points, 17 points, 13 points, they're going to be in the football game because these two teams aren't going to move the ball, though, even though, yes, Miami...
6-3 in the fourth.
That's my point, and that's why I think the New York Jets are going to be in this game. They're not going to get blown out by 30. There's no way they're not. They're going to be in this football game. That's why I kind of think Vegas has it only as Miami by 2. So I think the Jets are going to win it. And by the way, historically, the Jets have gone into Miami. Remember Rex? A couple of years with Rex, we won in Miami. Rex's last game getting carried off the field. So I think this is going to be one of those moments. Maybe Tomlin gets carried off the field. Maybe Tomlin gets carried off the field here. If the Steelers win and we get some luck. So you know what? I am praying that's going to happen. I am
honestly though, I mean, with the what show that we've seen at coaching, it makes me long for the days of Rex Ryan, man. Just
you know what? We were competitive.
And knowing that Robert Saleh is more than likely safe for next year just disgusts me so much.
He's coming back. Yeah, he's coming back.
He should not be coming back.
I know.
You can't.
You know what?
Especially if they do lose this game, you go from 7-4 to 7-10. I'm sorry. I don't care.
Well, you go 5-2, 6-3.
You can't justify coming back for year 3.
And they had some quality wins this year. That's why, look, it's going to be disappointing, but I think that'll certainly.
I don't think you can fire the coach after 2 years. You got to give him at least one more year.
Nah, not with this kind of collapse.
I'll say this.
Not with the unpreparedness.
But look what he had. Look what he had at quarterback.
I thought.
To me, that was.
But how do you explain the defense not getting stops in Minnesota? Start slow against Detroit. Start slow against Jackson.
But think about it. All of those things, right?
Against Seattle.
All of those things you're saying, the defense still kept them in every single game, and they really didn't. How many big first downs did they give up? I know, but they
was it for the tight end?
Listen,
what did our offense do? Our offense has done
right. I agree. But when push came to shove, the defense did not show up. When you needed a big stop on 4th and inches, the defense did not show up against Detroit. When you needed a stop against Minnesota,
the Detroit game,
did not show up.
I'll tell you this: the 3 games they're going to stick out like a sore thumb is going to be Detroit and the Lions game.
I'm not disagreeing with that. But when push came to shove in the biggest drives, the defense folded.
I wouldn't say they folded because they kept them in the game. And they're on the field all the time because your offense is going
Brad,
3 and out.
Jump in, Brad, before we get to the last
one. Your offense has to do something.
Go get a turnover at some point.
You're right. I agree.
Go ahead, Brad.
It's a good debate, by the way. But I agree with Chris. I think if there's anyone that needs to be fired, it might be Mike LaFleur. Even though he's not going anywhere. We all know he's not going anywhere. But once again, to Chris's point, what did he have to work with? Give him somebody to work with. Give him a chance.
Well, we're going to find out. There are going to definitely be some questions here. Regardless of the outcome.
Real quick, the bigger mistake was not getting a better veteran quarterback at the beginning of the year instead of Flacco.
That's true.
Because we would have had a shot.
I hate to say, but maybe you would have took an Andy Dalton type.
Something.
It would have been
somebody who's not a statue who's finished.
Their biggest mistake was not having a veteran quarterback at the start of last season.
Right.
Well, that's true as well. But if you look at this season where we came up short and not making the postseason, that is a point to be made. And I do think there are going to be Jet fans, if they lose on Sunday, and I'm praying they don't, that people are going to have a bitter taste in their mouth that we went from 5-2, 6-3 to 7-10. Yes, on paper,
we already do. Improved. We already do have a
I know. But I think it's going to, especially if they lose again to Miami and Miami makes the postseason. But listen, I believe the football gods are going to be in the favor of myself and other fans out there for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Brute Force, and the Steelers are going to find a way, and the Jets are going to win because that's going to be the Jets type of way. They're going to find a way to win because it's going to be that game of a low-scoring contest. And John likes the debate. He said Justin legitimate points, so very good to say. But you know what? We saved, I would say, maybe the best for last, and that is the game that other than the Steelers game, but I think more so, that I have been anxious to pick. And I have to say the Brute Force, we've been doing this now for almost a year. We did some picks last year, but we didn't count it by record. Of all the games that we've gotten a chance to pick, this is the one that I think is going to mean the most in Sportswire Radio history. And it's certainly going to be, it's thankfully not going to be the frozen tundra there in Lambeau. Sunday night, 8:20 kickoff. The Lions, our beloved Detroit Lions, and the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, since he said win out, have a chance to make the playoffs, he's 4 for 4 so far. But our beloved Detroit Lions have hung in there. They bounced back nicely against the Bears, and maybe the football gods are with us. Our Lions still, regardless, have had one of the most improved seasons, I think, of anybody in the league. Dan Campbell's, I think, going to get some Coaching of the Year consideration. And hopefully our Lions can return to the postseason here and have just an epic Cinderella-like story here, especially winning in Green Bay, a place that Detroit has not had much success in, at least I can think of in my lifetime. But the Brute Force Brad Weiss, I know I'm going to see that upset special there on that board. So I don't even have to go through the semantics. I don't have to convince you. I don't have to talk about Jared Goff, because I know here in Lambeau, Detroit, Sunday night, last game of the season in Green Bay, you're going with our Detroit Lions.
That is correct, Tom Bryce. All right, we're definitely going with the Detroit Lions. All right. Now, listen, am I cautiously optimistic about making this pick? Of course I am. I mean, the Packers are playing good football. Everything's clicking. Their last home game. And of course at Lambeau Field. I mean, it says everything says you should pick the Packers, right?
Absolutely.
But as me and Tom Bryce will say, is that we know, and we've been rooting for our Detroit Lions, and we know why they're going to be a resilient team this week and get the job done, all right? Because they're going to be motivated, all right? They're going to be ready to score and score and score, all right? And they're going to do it. I'm confident they're going to do it. This is going to be a high-scoring game, and I just think that somehow, some way, the Detroit Lions, obviously – hoping that the Seahawks win, which, by the way, I am not happy with the NFL scheduling the Seahawks game before the Lions and the Packers.
I would still the Patriots Bills Sunday. I still go into my point.
They should have had these games put at the same time.
Absolutely.
To me, it's just pathetic that the Seahawks win. Basically, Detroit stops playing, and doesn't play as hard, which is brutal. But listen, again, we're hoping. Me and Tom already picked the Rams. All right, we're saying the Rams win, and the Detroit Lions win and do what nobody thought would ever happen, which is make the playoffs, shock the world. All right, and listen, make me and Tom look like absolute geniuses. All right, because we were talking about this team and talking highly about this team. All right, and I said it. I did not say they were going to make the playoffs, but I did say they were going to win at least 6 games. They have proven me wrong and won more games than that. So I think that the Detroit Lions are going to make this happen. The fairy tale story is going to happen. And by the way, even if they don't, the Detroit Lions are going to be a team to be reckoned with for years to come.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. And I'm going to still say the Lions will still have something to play for regardless, because I don't think the Lions are just going to want the Packers to roll over them. That's just because there's that rivalry there. But, Justin, certainly I know some of us are going to probably pick with our heart rather than our heads. Lions have certainly been an incredible story here. They've had an incredible second half. And the Green Bay Packers right now, they might be the team that nobody wants any part of if they return to the postseason, because kind of like Tom Brady, records don't matter, because you got Aaron Rodgers and certainly maybe Aaron Rodgers on the road this year. Maybe he's in a different head, different frame of mind. But certainly Sunday night, last game of the regular season, our beloved Lions and the Packers. Packers are 4.5-point favorites. 49 is the over-under. And what do you think? I know what you think, and that's kind of why
I prepared for this show with a little ayahuasca before this. No, I didn't. Listen, the Green Bay Packers are on quite the roll right now, and I tend to believe Aaron Rodgers at his word. At 4-8, he said this team could win out and see what happens from there. This team's going to win out. They're playing some great football right now. It seems like things are settled at the wide receiver position, especially with the emergence of Christian Watson over the second half of the football season. And obviously the two-headed monster between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon has provided a monster boost to this Green Bay offense. And their defense is playing good too. And I just think that the Packers are just going to be one of those teams that you're not going to want to see. I know that Aaron Rodgers' history has been very poor against the San Francisco 49ers in the postseason. But I'm sorry, if I'm the 2 seed and I'm the San Francisco 49ers, I'm still scared to death of the fact that Aaron Rodgers might be coming into my building next week. So give me the Packers. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be a close game. Even if the Seahawks win and the Lions are eliminated prior to the 8:20 kickoff, and I know what everybody's saying, and I was saying the same thing. You wanted to have the Lions, Packers, Rams, Seahawks at the same time. But ultimately, this was the best game of the week. And the NFL had to pick the best game of the week for Sunday, 8:20. They already chosen the Titans and Jaguars to be the Saturday game.
That would have been another one.
Unfortunately, that these are the circumstances. But
for emotions, New England Buffalo, and they have something on the line for New England too. You could have made a case for that.
But you know what? When the schedule was released for Week 18, everything with Monday night hadn't happened yet.
I understand.
So I just think that, and the NFL did what they could. They picked the best game of the week, and they put it on Sunday night. It's going to be the best game of the week. The Lions, even if the Lions are eliminated, they're going to still have a spirited effort. They're going to play for their coach. They're going to play for pride, and I think they're just going to come up short. I think the Packers are just a little bit better.
Well, we'll find out. And Chris, certainly Detroit has had an incredible season. Will they be able to return to the postseason for the first time, I believe, since 2017? That remains to be seen. They need some help as well. And the Green Bay Packers, I mean, they got all the help that they could have ever asked for, and they partially control their own destiny here with a win. And as Justin pointed out, once Aaron Rodgers kind of made that declaration that if they win out and get the help, and you know what, if I was the San Francisco 49ers, I would be kind of scared after what Justin said about the Packers, because it is Aaron Rodgers. You know what, he might have some motivation this year because he's going into it not like we've seen him with home field and in Lambeau, and who knows, and it's still Aaron Rodgers. But it is the last game of the regular season. Our beloved Lions are on the road here in Lambeau, and Green Bay, though, is a 4.5-point favorites. 49ers the over-under, and what do you think?
Yeah, you know what? Detroit's had a great season. They beat Green Bay earlier.
Yep.
But listen, no matter what happens in that Seattle game, and I think Detroit's going to come out playing as hard as they can, just to finish their season off, on a positive note. So they're going to be playing their butts off. And they're going to be playing their butts off for Brute as well. So, but saying all that, I don't think it's going to be enough to beat Green Bay. Green Bay is playing their best ball right now, heading into the playoffs. If they win and they're in, they know that. And I think Green Bay wins. It's going to be a close game. And you know what? It's a great turnaround for Detroit. Let's see what they do next year. Next year, their goal has to be the playoffs. If they got this close, next year has to be the next step, right? So it's got to be a playoff team next year. Be great to see it, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. Green Bay.
And before I pick and before I get to John Gonzalez, the weather at kickoff will be a balmy 26. So 26 is balmy there for Green Bay.
Honestly, for January at Lambeau, not terrible.
No, it's not. 26.
Snowing, right?
Yeah.
No snow.
The future is absolutely bright for the Detroit Lions. Let me be first to clear when I say that, even though I'm picking the Green Bay Packers here. And another note, remember, the one time Aaron Rodgers did win the Super Bowl, he was the 6th seed. So
yeah,
there you go.
Maybe this is what Aaron Rodgers needs to win another Super Bowl.
Well, you know what, and that's the case you could make about Brady and Rodgers. They haven't had the seasons they would have thought, and they're going into it, and maybe they have an axe to grind. Maybe they now have a chip on their shoulder.
Think about what we said all year about how bad the Bucs are, how bad the Packers are, and we thought this was a chance that we might not have either Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady in the postseason, and here they are again.
All right, well, let me get to John Gonzalez before I basically make it a formality in my pick, which I'm sure most people will know. What vaunted Jets defense? They didn't make stops when it mattered. It was all on Wilson. John likes Green Bay.
Yep.
John says, love your Lions, but Packers are on a roll, and playing at Lambeau have to be realistic, and I think that's what most people are going to. Well, I understand.
If you were a real Detroit supporter and you're supposed to be Mr. Detroit, you would have picked Detroit. All right, but you know what? I think Detroit should officially take John Gonzalez out, and they should throw me. All right, as you guys. All right.
Before I pick, the only reason I could be thinking that John Gonzalez is going with Green Bay, he's worried that the napkin Anthony Finkel could go into this game. There you go. And I think that's the thinking. He's worried that the napkin's going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, because I'm telling you, that's what he's going to do. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And maybe by luck, he gains 2 games or 3 games on him going into that matchup. And he's going, you know what? Let me be safe. Let me be taking the safe road and pick Green Bay, because Finkel's probably going to go the same way. So he's probably thinking, eeny, meeny, miny, mo from Anthony Finkel. Let me go with Green Bay That could be the only reason I think that. Okay, Brute, you can now visit Detroit. He says, if this game was in Detroit, I would go with the Lions, but it's not. It's at the frozen tundra in Green Bay. But it's still not as frozen. It's not as frozen.
Not going to be that cold.
26 in Green Bay is like 80 in like Miami. I mean, it's that's the truth. I mean, listen, that's the point. He says, great show, guys. It's been a pleasure being your regular season NFL picks.
Oh, really?
Whoa.
It's
Wow.
still,
I hope that goes to backfire.
Forget that damn napkin. But that napkin, he's still very much in play. And that guy, I'm telling you, he's going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. He's in Virginia. He's probably doing whatever. He's going to watch this at like 1 o'clock and 1:30 in the afternoon and go to Brute and say, here's my picks. I'm telling you. And which I don't agree with, by the way. I don't agree with it. I don't think he should be doing that. But I am obviously picking the Detroit Lions because I do think that the Lions are going to be motivated if Seattle wins, which some people may think that regardless, if Seattle wins, I think they're going to want to knock Green Bay out. Why not the Lions? Listen, why not? If also, when was the last time the Lions beat Green Bay twice in a season? I mean, it's been a while, right? They haven't done that too often. I think I couldn't really think of when Detroit, maybe 91. I mean, listen, I have to look that up, but I mean, Detroit hasn't been very good much. I mean, and they haven't beat Green Bay often, in a season, let alone once. So there is motivation there. And I do think that their coach, they love playing for their coach. And I think Jared Goff has had a really, really good season, kind of under the radar type of season here. And I think he's actually had the better season than Aaron Rodgers. So that would be the reason I'm going to pick Detroit. Yes, I'm a homer. I know it. I'm Detroit all the way. But I will at least give you, unlike early in the year when Brute would ask me about the Steelers and the Lions, and I would give you no real reasons, I've given you reasons the last several weeks.
I have the answer.
No,
2018.
All right, that you know what? That was when Green Bay missed the playoffs, right?
I believe so. Lions 31-0 on December 30th, 2018. Lions 31-23, October 7th, 2018.
Okay, perfect. I would have thought maybe one time since 91, and that might have been one of those times. All right, so you know what? Excellent stuff. You can obviously listen to us anytime, and you can watch us on Facebook, and you tell us your picks. And I want to thank some people that have tuned in. Obviously, some new people as well. Switchblade Darylyn, future guest from Sportswire, Chris Urban, the Urban Warrior. Aunt Laura tuned in as well. Michael Germain. Dawn Casali, way back. I haven't seen Dawn Casali in a while. She tuned in and liked us, so thank you, Dawn. Carol Russo, I know she had one of my shows. I saw Carol next door before I went on the air. I want to thank Carol. So thank you, everybody here, for all that stuff. And we'll see next week. We'll have Black Monday to talk about what coach is going to be coming in, what coach is out. We'll talk playoff scenarios. So we'll do all of that. And I guess we'll figure out how do we go in terms of picking these games and what it'll count toward and all that stuff. So let's go to closing thoughts here. And Justin, I'm giving you the floor first. So anything you want to plug, share, say, 3 more locks of the week, you're welcome to do that as well. Anything else on your mind? And floor is yours, and plug your social media and fire away.
All right. Thanks for another great week, guys. Another fun week. It'll be an interesting week 18, obviously. And obviously you have the national championship on Monday night after a great sports weekend. Unfortunately, Ohio State and Michigan couldn't get it done. I actually would have looked forward to a rivalry rematch in the
Me
final.
too. I mentioned that 2 days ago at a bar.
Unfortunately, it was not to be. TCU. Congratulations to them. That was a hell of a victory. And obviously, Georgia winning by the missed field goal at the end by Ohio State. And obviously, it's going to be interesting. Can Georgia repeat, or will TCU knock them down a peg and actually win the national championship? So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, I'm ecstatic as an NBA fan with the way the Nets are playing, despite the loss of the Bulls, which was an ugly loss. They really did not play too well. Bounce back win tonight over the Pelicans, despite missing a couple of pieces. And how about the fact that Zion Williamson's hurt again? I mean, I said it at the time. He's not worth the big money, and yet here he is again. I think he's out for at least 4 weeks or something like that. It's just unbelievable. So that's what I got for tonight. You can follow me on Twitter at JGNelly12 and the Baseball Banter, which will resume when there's more news. Obviously, things are dead, and obviously the Hall of Fame vote again soon. So that definitely will be touched on. But other than that, The Baseball Banter Twitter page is at @bballbanter SM.
Absolutely. Excellent stuff. And I'm sure we'll have baseball news, whether it's Correa or somebody else, I'm sure in a few weeks. And
it's dead right now.
We'll get something. I mean, Robin Roscoe was wanting to come home. I'm like, I got no baseball, man.
There was really nothing.
What am I going to do? I mean, talk Met memories. I mean, Met memories of 70, 78 or something like that. I just can't do it. But, Chris, I want to give you the floor, my friend. I do know that we'll have a Talking Rivals show coming up. Always look forward to listen to you and Patrick a bunch of times this week. Appreciate the kind words. Enjoyed the trivia. Enjoyed the different back and forth you guys had, and obviously Patrick had some good news for him with his Red Sox earlier this week. But I do want to give you the floor. Anything else you want to plug, share, say? And the floor is yours, my friend, and fire away.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tom. Great show as always. Had a great time. Thank you, John Gonzalez, for always commenting and stuff. But what a week in the NFL, right? Could have been really horrible, but we got great news at the end of the week now with
Amen.
With Hamlin. Yeah, it couldn't have been any better the way it finished. So I'm looking forward to this final weekend. Another crappy Jet season finishing up here. Looking forward to a lot of changes in the offseason. We'll see with the roster, and who knows with the coaching with the coaching staff, but we'll definitely cover it on the Liftoff Jets show coming up with Charmin. And with baseball, this whole Carlos Correa saga it just keeps going and keeps going. Where's he going to end up? I still think he's going to be with the Mets. I really do. I think they'll figure it out because they both want each other. So I would think it's going to end up there. But now Minnesota's back in. But I think it's still going to be the Mets. I really do. I think they'll figure it out. I don't think Cohen's going to let him go, to be honest. I think he wanted him. So I can't see him not losing him, but just kind of stepping away. I think this is just a ploy, maybe get that years down a little bit or something, but they'll figure it out. So we'll be jumping on that hopefully on Monday. Hopefully we'll know a little bit more, and we'll have something to talk about on Talking Rivals on Monday. And you can catch me always on CP7NY on Twitter, and at Talking Rivals, at Liftoff Jets. And we'll see you guys soon.
And I'm looking forward to, on the Talking Rivals show, you're going to have a guest I know who is a Royals fan and a Twins fan, Chris, I believe, also. And you guys were talking about Zach Greinke and where he might end up. And you were also
he's
talking
still
about
out there, right?
Yep.
Did he say he wants to pitch in 23?
I think so. I don't know if they said it. I don't think I heard anything about retirement. So
okay. Yeah, maybe.
I guess he's waiting for
a one-year deal last season. Maybe.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, he's a guy that's an interesting name.
By the way, you want a little Carlos Correa parallel?
Oh,
it's now January 7th, 2023, because we've now passed midnight here on the East Coast. It was January 7th, 2021. The Lindor trade was finalized.
Ooh. Well, I mean, I would certainly be curious to see what happens there with that. Obviously, a lot of stuff I look forward to. Also, big shout out to Sean and listening to the Liftoff Jets show here. So all great stuff, and thank you, gentlemen. But we certainly haven't saved the best for last, but we saved the biggest for last here in the Brute Force. And what an eventful week it was for you on the basketball court. Obviously, boys here at Plainview really did a great job, and at the end of the week here, and certainly our friend Joe Santoro. I was speaking to Joe actually during the week after the game, and I know maybe after the season Joe would love to come on Sportswire, so I'm sure we'll definitely get into that. And also, of course, our SJ Long Island Golden Eagles, and really one of the more impressive wins that the program has had in conference play in a very, very long time. I was speaking with a bunch of the guys. I would probably say at least half the team after the game, and certainly consensus was certainly, I'm sure they're very anxious to what we have to say, and I'll make sure we get it up because the boys are going to be in action here in a little while, just like you are. So I'm going to certainly go right for the jugular here in the Brute Force. You know the drill at this point. I am so anxious about what you have to say when it comes to Plainview JFK, Joe Santoro, and of course our Golden Eagles, and much, much more. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, Tom, thank you for another great week of the Sports Report, the first of 2023. Another great show. So I apologize I was late, but certainly had to take care of business on the basketball court. Thank you, Justin and Chris, as well, for another great show. So looking forward to what 2023 beholds. And, of course, you can follow me on social media. You can follow me on Facebook, Bradley Weiss, Twitter at BradWeiss20, on Instagram at BWeiss20, and searching Coach Brad Weiss. And I actually added one more. You could also follow me on TikTok at BWeiss20. So,
well, you went to TikTok. All right. I give you credit.
I have not done anything there, but I am on there. So,
okay. Well, Kelly Dempsey's on TikTok, and it's worked out well for her, I see.
Yeah, so, we'll see what happens. We'll see what I want to do with that, but I haven't made the decision to get a page on there. So, follow me if you'd like. Certainly, speaking of things I enjoy following, that is our Hawks at POBJFK, and we got a really nice win today. Both JV and varsity won. JV won. We've had 2 straight tough losses. The first one was to my friend Brandon Becker in a 2-point double overtime loss before the new year. And then, obviously, as you mentioned, we played Valley Stream Central, coached by the great Joe Santoro, who, we were winning the whole game, and his team came back at the end and beat mine by 1. So they were resilient. Unfortunately, our guys just didn't match their intensity, but they learned from it. They came back today, and they had a great performance. So I'm proud of my players. And certainly we got a lot to do because we got a really tough opponent in Baldwin High School coming up.
Very tough game. Very tough game.
Next week. So we got practice tomorrow morning. But more importantly, tomorrow morning, Tom Bryce, I am making my debut in the Plainview Old Bethpage JFK alumni game.
Yep, saw that.
I'm making my debut. We have kids from across the town, my players, all coming out to see what I'm going to do on the floor. I even have a player on my varsity team who said that I'm going to score 15 points. He believes I'm scoring 15. So he's putting a lot of pressure on me. But
you did in 2018-19 in the second half. Yeah, you should score 15.
I mean, I had a few. I had a Wednesday game a few nights ago, and we won by 30. I had a good game in Massapequa. So, listen, I'm confident about my abilities tomorrow. It will be a fun day. I'm also looking forward to another alumni game in the future as well, and that is for our alpha mention, SJLI Golden Eagles, who I hope to play an alumni game for one day. And I am very proud of my Golden Eagles because they got a really nice win against Old West Prairie, as you mentioned, at home. It was one of those games to set the tone for the second half of the season, and they went and they set it for sure. And I'm just really happy to see guys like Ryan McNeely making big.
Well, by the way, Ryan McNeely, and I promised to mention this, I'm sure you know this, he had his career high 22 points on Wednesday.
Yes, and just talking about stepping up. I mean, he stepped up. He had a big performance in a big game. The rest of the team is coming through, and still without Alec Tabata. I think
and Timmy Hurt, by the way, and Timmy Hurt as well.
Yes, Timmy too. 2 really key players to this team, and they're still finding ways to get big wins like this. I think it's huge for them. I hope that continues as we go forward here. They have more very important Skyline matchups coming up. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I'm also looking forward to potentially getting out to the Tansy Center or one of these places to watch a game. I've been trying my very hardest to make a game. So I'm happy with what Coach Uhl is doing. I'm happy with what the rest of the staff is doing right now. And this team, listen, you know what? They're a 500 team right now, but everyone in the Skyline knows that this team is not a 500 team. And they are certainly over 500 in the Skyline. I think that will continue to rise as we go forward here in the season. So props to my Golden Eagles. Great job, guys, and keep it going. Certainly. Now, one more thing before I keep going. Obviously, I want to give a shout-out, as Chris did, to John Gonzalez for all his commenting and all his great work. I am not going to praise him on being in first place right now because he's still got to get the job done next week. But I will say you should follow his group on Facebook, and that is the Sports Authorities group. He does a great job there, certainly, so be sure to follow that. And to close out tonight, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I have to do it. All right, I have to talk about this because, listen, Justin Gianelli is 100% right. He should be the happiest basketball fan around. His team is playing at such a high level and playing incredible basketball right now, and they are poised, right, to not only continue to win, but also potentially be the best team in the Eastern Conference with the way they're rolling right now. But let me talk about Mr. Purgatory and Mr. Purgatory itself, which is the New York Knicks, all right? Because let's talk about purgatory, inconsistent. You want me to add a few more words to it? Okay, the New York Knicks, yes. Everybody's, Brad, they won a couple games in a row again. You should get back on the bandwagon. Oh, please. All right, they won a few games in a row, okay? And listen, this is what Knicks fans do. They get excited, okay? Like me last year, I did it. I fell in the trap, okay? I got excited, and then the Knicks did exactly what they always do, which is fall apart, okay? And the New York Knicks are going to do it again. Don't you worry. You see the man behind me, that's James Dolan. He'll find a way to screw it up, okay? And listen, I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to keep saying it until they do it. I know they won't, but they better. New York Knicks, please trade Julius Randle now, okay? This is the time he's playing so well, okay? He's doing everything right, that now this is the time to get what you can get in value for Julius Randle. This is the most value you'll ever get out of this man, okay, right now. He's an all-star player. Get rid of him, okay? Trade him, okay? Because this team, once again, let me add a point again. They are in purgatory. They don't know what they're doing, okay? They think they're winning, but they're just going to be a team that's one and done, all right? They think they're developing, but they only have a few players they're really developing, so they don't know what they're doing. And ultimately, figure it out. Understand this is not a championship-level team. Understand that this is not a team that's going to win the playoffs. Just do what you got to do. Get rid of Julius Randle, get some picks, get some young players, and develop this basketball team so that they could be the Brooklyn Nets, the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, one of these teams that can maybe be on the top in my lifetime, by the way, because I just don't believe it's going to happen, Tom Bryce.
All right, fair enough. I would say one thing before we get out of here, that the Knicks record is actually similar to teams like the Phoenix Suns, by the way, defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors, and it's better than teams like the Toronto Raptors and the Chicago Bulls. And there are teams out there that the New York Knicks are actually in.
That's not a persuasive tactic, Tom.
I'm guessing that when you warm up when you're playing basketball and you maybe you have some headphones in, you're not listening to JD and the Straight Shots.
No. No.
Well, I mean, look, I'm sure there's somebody out there that might be, and obviously each to its own, but obviously we'll see. We'll have more NBA talk starting next week on the show as well. I'll have a lot less games, and of course, I want to make sure everybody follows the Brute Force Coach Brad Weiss on Instagram, Snapchat, Bradley Weiss, also Brad Weiss 20 on Twitter, also B Weiss 20 on Instagram, also Bradley Weiss on Facebook. I also want to make sure I give a big shout out to our SJLI Golden Eagles on Instagram and Facebook, SJLI_MBB on Twitter and Instagram. And I want to give a big shout out to Coach Uhl, because I was speaking with Coach after the game on Tuesday, and I was really impressed with the team. And I love Coach's energy watching him on the sidelines. And you could see that team now is starting to gel. And I don't want to say who said it, but I was speaking with one player who you played with, by the way. This is the hint. He said that this is the most he's played on with the team in SJC, where the players have all gelled and all felt like they've bought in. So you kind of might know who that player is, who I just kind of hinted upon those comments, but I really think watching this team the last 4 or 5 games, you're starting to see the team that was the team that we thought at the beginning of the season would be at the top of the Skyline Conference. And I believe that they are going to be at the top of the Skyline Conference. And listen, Mount St. Vincent's is going to be a tough game coming up here this afternoon. Going into Brooklyn, seeing our old friend Alec Willis and Coach Cocazello. Going to be tough. It's a rivalry game, but I really like how this team is playing. And the reason I think that this team is going to play the way it's going to play is because, speaking with Coach, we have depth right now. We have depth and confidence. You have guys like Liam Sheehy off the bench, who was a Pace graduate student, who's coming off the bench.
Great job, by the way. Doing a great job.
Excellent. And I was speaking with Liam, and he's providing, I think, the leadership that Gordon Schroyer provided for us. Like that veteran who knows, who's been there, had the success. I think that's important. I'm also got to give a big shout out to our friend Nick Nemekis, who you forgot to mention. Speaking about Plainview alums, who had 7 points for us on Tuesday's game. And he's coming in. He's starting to now take the bull by the horns, and he's starting to have success. And Chris Connors, I was speaking with Chris. He's getting some minutes. Your old teammate, Mark Roberts Jr., got to give him a shout-out because Mark is hung in there. He's starting to get time. And obviously, Ryan McNeely, congratulations to him. He's going to be one of those guys that's going to be the cornerstone the next 2 years after this season. Matt Hurd, of course, big shout-out to Matt Hurd. And Spencer Malloy. It was all day Spencer getting those buckets off the fast break and everything else with Big Spence, and love what Big Spence is able to bring to the table. And Also want to give a shout out to Jake Gordiello. I think Jake now is becoming in. He's coming into his mode here as the player that I think we need for the team. So I think everything is filling in with this team. I want to give a shout out to Coach. I want to give a shout out to everybody here with the program. So please follow the Golden Eagles and everything they're doing. I cannot wait to watch the game here on Saturday. Also, before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to somebody that's giving you a shout out to Brute Force here. That is C2K, who was a guest a couple weeks ago. Wrestling star from upstate says the Brute Force all day. It also calls you a legend. Boy, the check is in the mail here, C2K. From a legend to another legend. Much respect. Boy, you've got fans now in upstate New York. I mean, C2K is a big sports fan, by the way, who tells us, and again, I guess he's proved that he watches our shows, and we'll have him back very, very soon. Also wants to say hello to the rest of the gang here. So I want to thank everybody here for tuning in. Also want to give one more congratulations. I want to give a congratulations to Brute Force to somebody you know very well. That is Jamel Gist over at York. The Cardinals have won a couple of games here, and he had a player most recently who dominated John Jay tonight, by the way. Divine Chilsum score 1,000 points here, and he's a fourth-year player over there at York, and he was able to score 1,000 points, a big milestone. You know how very difficult that is to get to. I want to congratulate Divine and certainly the York Cardinals, who beat my John Jay Bloodhounds tonight at the doghouse there. So York is getting back on track. A very, very good program there. Also, the Gist brothers are coaching together this year, by the way, the Brute Force. So Jamel and Justin, of course, Coach Gist, we know very well from Brooklyn. So I wanted to give a big shout out to Coach Gist. He has always been one of our biggest supporters. Coach is always watching my shows. Coach is always checking my stories. So I wanted to give Coach a big shout out. Actually, both Gists, because we love the Gist family. They have always been such good people, and we're going to get Coach Gist back on whether he likes it or not. So we have a lot to talk about there. But congratulations to Divine. Divine's a good kid, actually a great kid, and even better player, and then the rest of the program as well. So thank you, everybody here for tuning in. I'll be back coming up here Monday night with John the Rock Jackson. We'll have more coverage coming up on Sportswire Radio, and we were joined here by Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter, Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals, and the Brute Force Bradley Weiss here, the legendary SJLI Golden Eagles men's basketball alum. He'll give us the picks we didn't pick earlier on our thread on Facebook later on. But if you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming, which will be a sit-down Marks Marathon plus much more. So thank you, everybody, here for tuning in on the number one global radio station. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryson. Thank you, C2K, as well, for the kind words.